Go ahead and call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to the September meeting of the Laconia Zoning Board of Adjustments. And if anybody has their cell phones on, please silent them so as it would not disturb the rest of the people in the meeting. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. And with that, would you call the roll?
Steve Bogert,
Here.
Gail Ober,
Here.
Roland Mayhew,
Here.
Michael Foote,
Here.
Mike Delavecchia,
Here.
Jane LaRoche,
Here.
Marcia Hayward. Here.
So let the records indicate we do have a quorum, and that way we should be able to continue the business that is for us tonight. Okay? Next will be the acceptance of the minutes. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes. And does anybody have any changes, addendums, corrections? If there's none, please like to entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
Second, discussion. There being none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes, minutes are accepted. Okay. All right, next on the agenda is extensions. I have received information that the 3 extensions on board, the attorney has requested that we move the extensions to next meeting.
Correct.
Just the ones for Aqua.
Yes, there's only 3 extensions.
Same guy, right?
They're all the same guy.
Yeah, okay.
That's the one we hear every 6 months.
Yeah, I know.
So, do I need to motion that to move it to the next meeting?
Nope.
Nope. He has time to do that, right? We don't have to,
As long as the application is in on time,
we're good.
he's good, yep.
Okay, I didn't
So
want
he's-
something to lapse in
Yep,
the
nope, he's all
gray
set.
area. Okay, so as we move on to continued public hearings, application 2021-0018 SE 33 Clearwater Place. It's a special exception. Applicant is requesting a special exception per Article 7, Section 23570, subset 2, to allow for short-term lodging. And before we get started with that, I had received a letter from the attorney representing the applicant, has requested that, in his opinion, I should step down because of what was said at a previous meeting. Okay? And I have reviewed the information and reviewed the state statutes, and I have no reason that I need to feel like I need to step down. I have no fiduciary responsibility in or around this thing, and do not feel that my judgment has been clouded by the previous minutes. Okay? So I've addressed that, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. And I'm gonna move on and ask the applicant to please come forward and introduce himself for the record.
Mr. Chair,
And-
could I
yes.
just have one question?
Absolutely.
Did the attorney give a reason that he wanted you, was it specific or just something that you may or may not have said?
It was in reference to the, talking about the fine, because they were still renting out the place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Any other questions from the board on that matter?
No.
Okay, with that, we'll move on, and the applicant can please introduce yourself for the record and tell us how we might help you.
Thank you. My name is James Bianco, B-I-A-N-C-O. I'm an attorney representing the client. This is attorney,
My name is Attorney Brendan Weil, W-I-L-E. I'm here to assist Attorney Bianco.
with my voice, I need all the help I can get, so bear with me. Okay, maybe we proceed?
Absolutely.
So what, if I remember correctly, we were here in July, the 20th of July. And on the 20th of July, we brought together a very thorough information about what was going on in the situation. And since then, it's been 2 months. So since we haven't had a chance to meet with you all, what we did is put together similar information, which was getting done, but we got it to you today. So the information that you have today really explains kind of what we were doing before. So if there's any question, it's in the new one as well as the old one, which is here. Now, if you remember correctly, what this is about is a gentleman from out of state and his wife own property. The property is on lake. And so what has happened, he has, pursuant to your rules, had that sent out to other people. That people could go there for the weekend, could spend money and be there, which is allowed by your regulation. So he has done that. He does not live there, but he has done that. So what has happened over time is that there were some issues that were not handled properly. There were people there that were loud. There were people there that were not doing what they should do when they were supposed to be having fun on the water. The gentleman, being out of state, contacted us and said, there's a problem, but I'm down here. Can you help? And we said, of course we can help. So what we've done is to look at the situation as we know it, talk to a gentleman who's behind us, see there, put his hand up, who has been on site, is on site, and that's what he does in his job. He will get up in a moment to speak and explain what he saw, what is there, and what should be there. So with that in mind, back in July, which when we sent the first out, we went over the details. And so, as I said, we did them a little bit more now, so you can see what's going on. So you have regulations, which I believe we meet to the T. And after that, we explain what was going on with these neighbors. Our client has been upset by the fact that he did not meant, nor did his wife, that the neighbors would be not on good stead. In fact, one of the neighbors wrote a note back saying what transpired there, which I'll get into, really excluded him and his neighbor, who were nice people. They were not there. I believe, I could be wrong, it was near motorcycle weekend. Now, having grown up in this area years ago, I knew that was time for people to have a lot of fun, if you would describe it. So what's happened in that site, he has tried to make friends with the neighbors, talk with them, explain what went on, and more than that, gone out of his way to make sure this other gentleman that will speak goes on a regular basis. Should there be too many barrels there? Should there be someone with some other things that are going on that are prohibited, to take care of that immediately? He also plans to come up here on his own as he gets a little older and spend more time here. He is in a situation with his wife where he does not want to have bad relationships, but it was there, and I believe we've contacted with most of the people there to speak to them. We have one more that's concerned about a fencing. We're putting a fence up, so there's no question about who owns what. There was a question about some other things, and we've taken care of most of those as well. So we're here in good faith. The gentleman, Mr. Bogart, and I had a little bit of a bump the last time we were here. He took his back, I take mine back. Nice to see you. And so what I'd really like to do is talk about the incident and what happened, rather than talk about, sort of a bad day. The client has asked us to do whatever it takes to be fair, and so he can come to New Hampshire and enjoy it. So that's in a sort of big state of where we are with this. If you want to speak a little bit to what the newest part is, what this gentleman put together, so you can have that.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So this updated proposal, it talks more about the specifics that go into the application for the special exemption and all the elements that we need to hit. And just to clarify something that I don't know if it came across as clear, but Mr. Melville and his wife live at the property during the time that they do not rent it out. If I could direct your attention, I won't hit every item here just to save time for everyone else, but I will direct your attention to the elements that I'm looking to emphasize here. In section B, which requires that the use will not increase demand for municipal services. According to Bayside Rentals and At the Lake Rentals, two of the management companies that have managed this property since 2014 when it began to be rented out. This has been going on since 2014, therefore this would not increase any demand as opposed to previous years. Lodging arrangements, both short and long-term, have not exceeded allowable capacity. And concerns regarding increased production of garbage have been met after those concerns were raised by neighbors. And At the Lake Rentals now, as Mr. Dan Martis behind me will be able to clarify for you later, is now sending staff to pick up garbage on Saturdays to ensure that excess garbage does not sit on the side of the street before the city picks it up, and to ensure that the amount remains manageable both for the area and for city sanitation workers. If I can move you to item D, which requires that the use will not create hazards to health, safety, or general welfare of the public. The property has been, as we've talked about, has been used for this since 2014. Mr. Melville has heard the concerns of his neighbors and is taking steps in order to make sure that their experience with the renters is an easier one. He's building a fence on either side of his property, as Mr. Bianco had told us before, to ensure to shield his neighbors from any undue noise or annoyance and to prevent any accidental trespasses. At the Lake Rentals, as Mr. Martis will testify to, has 40 years of experience and supplies full services to owners, renters, as well as their neighbors, as well as a line to call to address any issues. When At the Lake has been addressed of any issues, as Mr. Martis will discuss, whether with an occupancy concern or any garbage buildup, they have addressed this issue quickly, usually within the hour of being informed. The rental agreement, as well as the briefing of any renters, also takes into account, is also included an explanation that parking outside of the driveway will not be allowed, as it creates undue congestion in the neighborhood. Moving to item E, as a requirement, the use in question has to have been common practice at this property and the structure for more than 5 years before the enactment of the short-term lodging ordinance. As we talked about, the property was used as a short-term rental property consistently by the prior owners, the Ebjornsons, from the summer of 2014 to their sale of the property to the Melvilles. This was 5 calendar years and 6 summers before the ordinance itself was adopted. Bayside Rentals owner Robert Wickland, he provided an affidavit in your materials where he confirmed that his company managed the property continuously from 2014 to 2017. Mr. Martis has testified in the materials and will testify here that his company has provided continuous rental support from 2017 on. And finally, there's for another element there to satisfy. The general community benefit will rise above any financial gain just to Mr. Melville and his wife. City benefits from an increase in tourism and lodging in the area, and Mr. Melville hopes to use any potential gains to expand his existing business and hopes to open up a shop in the area as well in the future. And under the ordinance, therefore, we believe we meet all of these elements, and so I would yield the rest of my time to Mr. Martis to explain what the role of his company, how he addresses concerns, and to answer any questions you may have for him.
I have one other thing just before the gentleman comes. We believe, and it's in writing, that Mr. Melville meets all the requirements listed under the city council, under their regulation, including the new regulation. So we have gone out of our way to know what it is, gone out of our way to say, do we meet it? And if not, we do. This gentleman will explain more, but I wanted to be clear that we did listen and we did change. The people that are not here tonight to speak for themselves are, let me say, upset because of what has happened. They don't want that. They want to come here and enjoy, and I hope they will. But if you have questions specifically on that, when we're done here, we'll be glad to take them, all right? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you might have related to the Melville property. But before I do that, I just wanted to take a second to introduce myself and my background on the company. I'm with At the Lake Vacation Rentals. We're based in Moulton Borough. We're a locally owned and family operated business. We've been in business since 1980. We don't operate with call centers or remote staff, so everybody that works for the company lives here and works here in the Lakes region, which is important. We represent just shy of 100 homes, and we help homeowners, offset the cost of ownership and realize the dream of having a vacation home in New Hampshire. This summer, we represented, we welcomed about 1,000 different family groups this summer, and really the vast majority of our groups are family groups who are happy to be here. Particularly since the pandemic, people aren't traveling as far as they might otherwise been inclined to, and so vacation rentals have been really important for those families looking to go away on vacation. Did you have specific questions you wanted me to address? Okay.
I have a couple of questions. One's regarding the garbage and one parking. You're going to be picking up garbage on Saturdays. What is the normal pickup day for the city for garbage in that neighborhood?
It's normally, so it operates, I believe the city engages Casella, and on Tuesdays, they do a pickup of trash, and recycling is every other Tuesday. Normally, we've managed the property since 2017. We hadn't had that issue, to my knowledge, before this summer. At least it wasn't reported to us. But a tenant did report to us this summer that the trash hadn't been picked up. And then we also got a notification from a neighbor. So as soon as we found out, we did send someone that day to take care of the garbage. What Mr. Melville is going to do to supplement the weekly trash service is to have one of our independent contractor handymen go down on Saturdays, make sure there's, the trash has been picked up and that there's nothing left by the curbside or anything that might be disruptive to the neighborhood.
Wouldn't a Sunday or a Monday be better to do, because that's when the trash is going to go out there?
Well, it actually has to do with the day that we welcome guests. So our turnover day is on Saturday, and so just to make sure there's a clean slate when guests depart, and that's really a supplemental trash service to the existing weekly trash service that exists.
And reading a lot of the abutters' letters, they're really concerned about a lot of the parking that just seems to be scattered all over the place and out front of neighbors' mailboxes. What have you made arrangements for parking? I mean, are you going to limit how many cars they can have, and where are they going to go? I mean,
Sure.
That is a big question, I think, for a lot of the abutters are very concerned about the parking.
It is an important question, and one of the most important factors to my business is to make sure that we maintain good relationships with all of the neighboring parcels. So, I encourage folks to have our phone number, to report issues as they see them, because we want to be proactive and we want to make sure that, we're not disruptive to the neighborhood in any way. To answer your question about the parking specifically, in this case, we call the guests a few days before their check-in just to remind them of the rules in general, of which parking is one. Another concern is that's been raised this summer is around the lot lines. So I think that would, maybe addressed later on through a potential fence. But we give them guidance as to your voices carry when when you're nearby water, and so you may be thinking that you're operating kind of at a reasonable tone, but as particularly into the evening hours, it becomes important to be mindful that your voices can carry, so not to be disruptive to the neighbors. We give them guidance on where to park, and we ask them how many cars they'll have. Mr. Melville has a fairly good-sized driveway. He can easily accommodate 4 cars. I think it's just important to make sure that guests know before they arrive that there can't be any parking on the street for safety reasons and convenience reasons, and there's really no reason to have to do that. There's plenty of parking in the driveway.
May I say something? The answer to your question is yes and yes. We don't want any problems. We don't want people that are parking incorrectly. We don't want damaging to neighbors. We want to be nice neighbors. So he's in the process of explaining how it will work. The man who owns this is also in the process of calling us on the phone, saying, if there's a problem there, do what you have to do. Now, you don't hear that. I don't hear that from a lot of clients. But I don't think he wants anything that's going to cause problems to the people coming or his own family. So thank you for the question. It's very good. And we hope very much to take care of that with our help.
So did that answer your question?
It does, but are you gonna limit them to 4 cars? Since
Well, you
that's all
know,
the driveway can accommodate? I know,
I
it's,
haven't got that for you.
I-
but
Okay.
I think, look, you know, I don't want to speak for Mr. Melville, but if that's a concern that would be contingent upon his approval for this, then we could certainly put in the marketing, you know, no more than 4 cars.
He's working on that right now.
I mean, it seems like the abutters like the owners very much, and it's just the renters that the problem lies.
Well,
Well, I will, if I may, you know, we've had that property rented for several years, and we put many different family groups in there. I can count the number of issues we've had. They're few and far between. So while it may seem like this is a recurring issue, you know, honestly, we don't have a lot of problems. We have very good people, good family groups that come through there.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Please.
I think just for your edification, for all of you, over this winter, when you probably weren't using this as a short-term rental, the city of Laconia made a decision at the city council that they were going to ask for strict enforcement of the 2 barrels per property rule. So I would bear that in mind for any properties you may have within the city of Laconia, that it has always been the rule. Now the enforcement arm has started
thank you.
to do that. So if you didn't have a problem in the future and you are having problems now, that would be why. All right, and that did happen over the winter. Okay, just so that you understand that, and that is strictly enforced now. So, and then my other question goes to what you've stated here is that, and I'm going back to the one you just submitted, okay?
Please.
You bought this property when?
Mr. Melville bought the property in 2019.
Do you know when in 2019?
I don't.
I believe it, we'd have to double check the record. My recollection is that it closed in, between October and December of 2019.
Okay, and are you aware of when the city council passed this ordinance?
In December of 2019, I
Okay.
believe.
Okay, and then it was in, and are you aware of when Mr. Melville transferred this property to, I believe it is a legal corporate name, I got it here someplace.
D&G Clearwater LLC.
D&G Camp Clearwater LLC.
We're looking.
According to your records, it's September 1st, 2020, but I can't confirm that other than in this record at this time.
Okay. Do you recall when you made application to the, when did you discover that the city had a short-term rental ordinance for your clients?
So, if I
And you
may-
managed the property
so, yes,
before the
and-
clients
and,
came on
you know,
board, so
just
you
by
may
way
be
of
better
full
to answer that.
disclosure- Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
I was just going to say, by way of full disclosure, at this current time, we only represent Mr. Melville in the city of Laconia. Most of our rentals are in Moulton Borough and in Meredith, and so, you know, my office was not aware of that ordinance. I happened to be doing some research on the city's website,
Okay.
and as soon as we became aware of it, I let Mr. Melville know, and we didn't take any new bookings from that time. We blocked the calendars, but we did have some bookings that were in place. But he has foregone bookings that he otherwise could have taken, and while this matter is under consideration.
Okay, and you weren't the original attorney of record, were you, Mr. Bianco? No, okay, so we have seen this before, you just have not represented the client. And Dean, did we go back to April on this application, April of 2021, sometime around that time when the initial application was filed with us?
Yes.
Okay, with this, were there any,
To answer your point, when he hired us, he said to me, I don't want any trouble there.
no, I understand.
Please, do what you have to do. He's a very nice man, his wife's very nice, and he just wanted help. So we have tried very hard to listen to you all, listen to people here, and then look at the statutes and see how we can do it. If you look at the statutes, it's pretty clear, he can do what he's doing. The law's not there, it's how we do it. How do we apply it? What do we do? That's what we're in the process of doing now. And I'm glad we're back to be able to do that rather than to smack each other.
Okay, and one other thing that you said here is, so you at some point stopped renting when you learned that the city had passed an ordinance that you may have to satisfy, and that you blocked that off, and then, I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, what it was is when we uncovered this, we blocked the calendar from taking net new bookings. We had some bookings in place for this summer already, folks that had agreements in place. But he didn't take any new bookings while the matter was under consideration.
Okay. All right, thank you.
To answer your question, Gail, the house was purchased by the Melvilles on November of 2019.
Oh, I already know the answer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh, oh.
yeah, I don't ask questions unless
Okay.
I know the answer.
Thank you.
I just wanted to see.
Now we know.
I just wanted to see if they knew the
Oh, we
answer.
just want to hear the right answer.
I'm not asking questions I don't already know the answer to.
Funny.
But thank you.
You
for
can't
trying
pull
to
one
help.
over on
I'm just
Gail.
trying to establish for the rest of the members on the board that may not have
The
done this
timeline.
research, that there is a timeline
Yes.
to this, and that the timeline, is such and such, and that's all I'm doing, because unfortunately for this, when the Melvilles first bought the property, we didn't have an ordinance. However, we did have an ordinance when they sold the property to D&G, which is the legal entity that is before us today, trying to seek
Got it.
permission under our short-term rental ordinance to continue with this practice. Okay, so that is just where we are in the timeline, and I believe that the planner can confirm that we got our first application with a check, presumably, for the fee, in April of 2020, of 2021.
At the first meeting,
I'm sorry, sir?
at the first meeting, it was understood that the people who represented D&G were supposed to provide us with information on the last 5 years of rental of that property, because it's very clear in our ordinance that 5 years' experience is necessary in order for us to grant the permission to use, for this use. So they didn't bring it.
Okay.
We rescheduled the meeting. That's the meeting, I think it was in July. And we scheduled the meeting, they came in, we asked specifically for that information, they didn't have it. That's the second time.
Well, we're here for the
We
third time.
insisted that for the third meeting, we had to have that. That's when they went to you, and they went to the other person that was there before you, and they got us the information we wanted. As far as I'm concerned, you've satisfied our regulations. We have the information we asked you for.
Okay,
The information with regard to too many cars in the yard,
yeah.
trash out
Yeah.
there, that's for another day.
Well, sir, with all due respect, I agree with you, except we've been talking to him about that's not another day. We've been saying that's a day today, that we have to make that place.
Well, that may be,
Like the
but as far
neighborhood.
as I'm concerned, you satisfied your requirement.
Now, I just want you to know, though, with all due respect, that we've tried with this gentleman's help to make sure that that place is like other places in the neighborhood. And they are willing to do it, i.e. putting a fence up, so there's some concern about where the line is. They've done other things that are willing to do that.
Oh.
His last voice to me the other day on the phone was, I want to leave and go back and be friendly. I don't want to go back and have problems. So whatever it takes, you let me know.
Because the people did actually haven't.
I know,
They
I
had,
understand.
because I went over there and investigated. I went over there several times, because I wanted to
Good.
see at different times, different days, and so forth, what was there.
Yep.
And so, the people who wrote the letters did have a grievance.
Well, we'll give you our card, and if it's not right when you're there, you call us. Okay?
Well, that would put upon someone the need to go over and check on it every day, which I'm assuming
He would do.
your representative
What I
would
meant
be
by that, if he
fulfilling
goes-
there.
he goes over and sees something to let us know.
I think that's,
That's
if
what I
I
meant.
may is part of the permitting process. There's communicational documentation and stuff like that that has to be present on the site that allows someone to know who to call in case of emergencies and who to call in case there's complaints and stuff like that. I think that's part of the permitting process that the city goes through with the applicant. I do have one question as far as a follow-up to the parking and stuff. Do y'all have a welcome package you give your potential when they come in to pick up the keys so they can do, or whatever it is y'all do?
We do have a welcome package, so it's kind of a two-part thing. We do like to speak with the guests in person before they arrive if they're not able to check in at our office to make sure we go over the rules with them in person. We also will send them a welcome package that includes emergency information, emergency contact information, and just information about, you know, who to call if there's any type of issue with the house. And we have 24/7 support, and they do, we all rotate a cell phone in the summer, and believe me, they do call. But I think that's one of the important things that makes a company like ours different than just, you know, random Airbnb type operators. We really do try to provide a level of quick response and service that hopefully is successful for both our guests and neighboring homeowners as well.
The reason why I asked, that might be a great place to mention something about the parking to the potential clients, so that A, you've done it in your persons, and B, they have it in writing, so it's,
Yeah, good idea.
you know, that's all I had to.
Thank
Well, the thing is, that's a cul-de-sac, so there isn't a lot of room in there to maneuver.
Right.
All right.
Any other questions at the moment?
I would, what is the occupancy for that building? Because the occupancy seemed to be an issue for some of the neighbors.
Right now, Mr. Melville, this year sleeps 16 people at the house. You know, I don't want to speak for Mr. Melville, but I think he's open to reducing capacity if needed, if it's become a problem. I will say the only time we got an occupancy complaint this year, I had someone there within an hour of my office being notified. We did an interior and exterior inspection. We found 6 people at the property and 3 cars, which was not the way it was reported to us. So I just want to, that's why I think there's always 2 sides to every story, and we try to be as responsive as we can.
No, we appreciate that.
Does that answer your question, Nick?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions at the moment? There being none, y'all can take a 2-second break here, and I'm gonna open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Hildreth. I live at 39 Clearwater Place, abutting the property with my wife Tracy. I'm a lifelong resident of Laconia, and I'm sure maybe some of you would recognize the name for us being here a long time. We're permanent residents there, and the permanent number of residents in our neighborhood, this small cul-de-sac, is 14 adults and 3 children. There have been upwards of 22-plus people in a week, and several times that many people, which more than doubles the population of the neighborhood. It's usually a quiet area, but with that amount of people and upwards of 10-plus cars, it gets very busy, very noisy. I would point out this is not someone that is trying to rent a few weeks to help pay their taxes. This is basically a for-profit business in a neighborhood where you can't even have a duplex. So we basically got a small hotel next door through, starting in the spring and ending in the fall. So you've got people on vacation, it's like a hotel, and I don't blame the people, they're paying a lot of money to be there, but it is, in my opinion, a general nuisance. There have been blocking our mailbox, blocking all those sorts of things, which seems like they're trying to address. My first question, well, I'd like to bring up the July meeting when it was noted that there was no permit in place. And if they have to have a history of 5 years of renting, I would offer that if it's being rented without a permit, wouldn't that make that time period moot? And you would have to be rented legally in order to consider the 5 years. I'm no attorney. I'm not sure about that.
I think in this situation, the 5 years would be prior to when the city council enacted the current, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ordinance.
Ordinance. Okay, thank you very much. And so therefore, there was no permitting or anything process in place. So those 5 years would be,
So the fact that it was rented for 5 years at one point
that
carries
part
through
of it is,
forever.
that is the reasoning behind it, because there were, other than other companies, per se, that allowed, that kept records and stuff. So that's what we look for, to see if the records at best that can be put in place indicated. There's several, and that's why we ask for several different types of documentation, because one helps support the other, and it's hard to fudge a whole bunch of documents, but it's easy to fudge one document. So that's why we look at different sources and stuff, to see that, yes, they were doing this prior to. The permitting process is only something that recently happened, as they said, what was it, December?
It was December of 2019.
Right, so that's when the permitting process had started. Okay, so prior to that, you can't hold a house to it, other than the fact that they have records indicating they were using it for that.
Right.
Does that help you to understand?
And John, so you understand the permitting runs with the property, not with the owner?
Right.
Okay.
Right, I
So in
understand
other words,
that.
if there was a lack of continuity between owners during that time, that's not the issue. The issue is whether the property itself was used as such. Okay, so
And they make application in a certain amount of time. It just doesn't, if it lapsed for a couple of years, then that story doesn't hold true. It's gotta be within that window pane,
Sure.
okay?
Sure, I understand. I'd also like to point out that in July, when they were asked to cease and desist all rental property, all rental activity, nothing was interrupted, and the rentals came through right through the beginning of September.
And that is
So-
something the city itself will have to deal with if they so choose.
Okay. You know, I understand that they bought this property for income and to rent it. I would just ask that the council consider, and I don't know if you can, but a longer-term rental, because the amount of people, it's listed in the tax records as a 3-bedroom home. So 16 people there. The lots are very small there. You know, we're talking about 1/3 of an acre each, very, very small. So I would just ask that all these things be considered when you're when you are considering the application or the variance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Insha Haq. I am the owner, along with my husband, Alan Hong, of 40 Clearwater, directly across the property for 33 Clearwater. We've written a number of letters. I think you have those on file. So I'm really interested to express my primary issue with the property. So to give a little bit of background that is included in one of the letters briefly, my husband and I both work as physicians locally in this community. We serve an enormous population. My primary concern, which has been in 3 times of major concern, is regarding safety. Both my husband and myself are liable to be immediately available for patient care and emergencies in this area. I have had 3 separate occasions where there was a significant delay of us leaving our home in our driveway with the road completely blocked due to the number of occupants and cars shuffling to themselves get out of the driveway with 10 to 11 cars. If there is a cardiac emergency, I cannot rely on a 1-hour consultation from a rental company to meet a patient at the hospital. What would have taken 6 minutes to get to Concord Hospital, Laconia for our home. This has been multiple incidents. I've called every time to the office with this complaint. I do seriously have a concern regarding safety, given that our jobs are liable to protect any person in this room who has a heart attack, any person in this room who has a relative in a nursing home that needs immediate care, and I can't get out of my driveway because of the obstruction that is not going to be resolvable in a matter of moments, but from what I've heard today, within an hour. I don't think that is safe for our community. I don't think it's safe for us to be medically and ethically obligated as physicians to serve this population for which we came to Laconia and moved here to be physicians for this community. That raises serious concern for myself as not only a community member, but as a medical provider, as a physician, myself and my husband, 2 providers who are not able reliably to get out of this neighborhood because of a circumstance that won't be addressed immediately and certainly causes concern for myself and for the community that we serve for our patients.
I just have one question for this person, Mr. Chair.
Please.
During those instances or any other parking violations, have you notified the police?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recall when those were?
The most recent occurred on the week of 4th of July, when there were a maximum of 12 cars that I saw. I called the police. They notified me that it's not under their authority, and they recommended that I contact the zoning board, which at that point I had provided a secondary letter. I'd also like to make a note that I or my husband, neither one of us has been approached by Gary or Doris since this entire progression of the situation. They do come, our cars are outside, and we are home, and they have not made a single incident. We've received 1 letter that was addressed from his attorney notifying, I'm sorry you're having problems. If you're having problems, call this number. I don't think that addresses my primary concern of getting out of my home safely and reasonably to get to patient care, which we are obligated to provide. But yes, I did contact the police, and that was the response I received.
Okay, and you called them once, and you recall that being around the beginning of July?
I recall being about the beginning of July, yeah. And I spoke to, I think, the police chief, because I sort of was looking to get a reasonable answer, because it's a concern of safety, I think, in my
Okay,
opinion.
so you called to talk to the police chief, but at the time when you couldn't exit your property, you did not call to file a complaint through dispatch?
It was the same week. So when that happened, for the second time.
It was the same week, but not the same instance?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's what escalated my concern, really, to make this more heard, that this is a safety concern, and that was what their recommendation was, that this is not under their authority, that I need to contact the zoning board again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tracy Hildreth, and I reside at 39 Clearwater Place. And I'd like to bring up the noise level with having an Airbnb next door. I wear hearing aids. I work from home about 80% of the time. And when I'm in my home office, without my hearing aids on, I have to shut the windows because of the noise outside. And like John said, I can't blame these people. They're paying premium dollar to be on vacation. But when you have a vacation home that you're residing next to 7 days a week, they're outside hooting and hollering it up, and we're paying premium tax dollars to be on the water, so I've got to shut my windows to keep the noise out. And like I said, I wear hearing aids. I don't have them in, but I have to shut the window. And that's not fair.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to speak for or against this application? Please come forward at this time. Yes, sir.
My name is Jim St. Pierre. I live at 114 Morningside Drive, which is the neighborhood just south of the Clearwater Place. You know, looking over the rules and regulations, I can see that you're probably going to approve this based on the 5 years. The hardship I have with it is that it becomes incumbent upon the neighbors to enforce the rules and regulations. If you're not happy, call and complain. Call this person, call that person, call the police. I mean, they're the ones that are facing the burden of having to live next door to this. They're not enjoying any of the benefits. I don't see the cities getting any benefits. If they are, they're not measurable. But they're facing those hardships every day, can't hear, trying to entertain in my own home. There's too much noise next door, too many boats, too many cars, putting garbage in front of my house. Why is it incumbent upon the neighbors to have to enforce this? If you're going to approve it, I would suggest you put some additional requirements on it. Nowadays, people are using noise monitoring systems. Let the gentleman that's making money, managing it, have a noise monitor through the cloud, directly tied into the house, so when the noise is above a certain decibel, he gets his phone ring and says, they're making too much noise, rather than John having to call all the time and say, they're making a lot of noise. Put a video camera in the house, directed through the cloud to his phone, that says when the head count exceeds a certain number, or the cars are in the driveway, too many cars are in the road, let him enforce the rules. Let him observe it himself and enforce those, rather than the neighbors having to do all that, take all that burden and go through all that. Lastly, my home is in Windmill Shores Community Association. We're 64 homes. I'm very concerned the precedents this will set, although the 5 years is a little different situation. None of the homes in our association have been rented for 5 years. But just the long-term impact to some of our homes is concerning to me and to my own home, which is on the lake. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to speak for or against this application? Please come forward and introduce yourself for the record.
Hello. My name is Alan Gothier, and I live at 100 Morningside Drive. As Mr. St. Pierre said, it's just south of where we're talking about. And I believe it was a couple of 3 years ago, we had the problem on North Main Street, Old North Main, which brought VRBO to everyone's attention. And now we've got the same thing that's popped up again like a whack-a-mole. It's come 2,000 feet further south from the first problem. Now we're looking at another problem situation, and what the solution seems to be is we're going to put lipstick on a pig. That's what they're suggesting is we'll make this one very pretty, but no matter how you look at it, it's still a pig. It's still the same problem. They've made it pretty, but it hasn't gotten any better. My concern also is as we look at the price of shorefront property on Lake Opeechee and some of what's going on with Lake Opeechee, I look at the 11 houses that are on the shore in our little community, and we're looking at a low tax bill of $10,000 to a high tax bill of $18,000 on these 11 properties. That's based on value, which the city puts on, which is resale. And that's what triggers it as we have our rolling reassessment. Now, as we have motels come in and come next to an $800,000 house, and then somebody pays $900,000 and makes it into a motel, what does that do to the value of the 800? Now, when that one goes down, the one behind it's gonna go down. Are we gonna go down? Are we looking at a tax abatement because we're gonna have motels in our midst anymore? We have problems, I've spoken to this gentleman over here with shorefront illegal buildings being put up. So say we have enforcement, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. I've called Mr. Treffrin, and I've called DES, and there's a treehouse within 50 feet of the shorefront. I look at it every day when I look out my window on the lake. So enforcement is not the answer because we don't have the enforcement capability in this city. So what do you, I just am really concerned that as this explodes and mushrooms into something bigger, I'm going to see my home value go down, my neighbors' home values go down, and the city of Laconia lose a little bit of tax money. We're pretty low-lying fruit, low-hanging fruit for you guys to come and pluck 10 grand and 15 grand and 18 grand for taxes. I hate to see that start to go south. I'm sure there's someone else from down country that'll come up and pay me, and they'll pay the same tax, but I hate to leave the house after being there 45 years. But I don't know, if you guys have any suggestions on the enforcement, if I'm being too rough on this gentleman, then let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to speak for or against this application? Please come forward at this time. Let the record indicate no one else from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Therefore, I'm going to bring it back to the board for further questions of the applicant.
I have one question that maybe the property manager can answer.
Okay. If y'all would please.
You can all come up, I don't care. My only question is Dr. Wong indicated that she notified the police for at least once in early July for a parking issue. Were you ever contacted by the police department about that?
To my knowledge, we were not contacted at the office. I can't speak for Mr. Melville himself.
We were
Okay.
not.
We're not. Thank you.
So I got a question, and it's kind of, if I had to go to look at the criteria here and stuff, and all parts of the criteria, D here is the use will not create hazards to health, safety, and general welfare. And as I've listened to a couple of the abutters, I would have to say that they have, which means we have, issues with that statement. When two physicians cannot get out of their house that provide essential medical services, then that is general welfare in my book, okay? And the safety and health. So that's creating issues that there's no coming back from, because if it takes them an hour to call someone here. Now, the reason why I'm asking this question here is I would like to hear something back. So this is, instead of me waiting and then just having a discussion with this. So this is the opportunity that I'm prevailing upon y'all. The hour response, there's someone's life at stake in this situation. Not every situation is always, but every property is unique in itself and must be judged upon itself, okay? The 5 years of rental and stuff like that is great, but the circumstances is also around these other portions of this, okay? And D in itself, I have to say, there is the quality of life now for the neighbors that are in question, And the absolute safety, as I said, as two physicians, cannot get out of their driveway and wait for an hour to get cars out of the way or a response from the service, then that seems to be unnecessarily a health hazard, because someone's gonna have at the hospital ramifications they don't come back from. So please help me to work through this, because I have grave concerns, because I don't want to be someone that's going to need the services and not be able to get it, because there's too many people or too many vehicles and everybody's playing whack-a-mole with cars trying to move them in a cul-de-sac. So
Well, this
please
gentleman's gonna
help me.
he'll respond to that, but, from our perspective, that's not what we want either. That's not what our
I
client
understand.
wants.
That's why I'm,
right?
you've
So
stated
whatever
that,
it
and that's
takes
why I'm
from our
allowing
perspective-
y'all the opportunity
Yeah,
to help me and help the board and help the neighbors, okay? All in one sitting, since we're here, because everybody wants to feel whole. And like they said, they bought their property for living, and everybody around it has bought their property for living, so they want to feel like they're whole and not giving up their rights so that someone else can do something, because it's spreading out and interfering with their lifestyles. Because they have just as much right to their lifestyle as each and every property owner. So help me, please.
well, first of all, thank you. Secondly, we understand what they're saying, it is not our intent to do anything to make it more difficult for people. Were there more cars on occasion? Yes. Is that still going on? We're trying to eliminate it. This gentleman can speak to that a little bit more than I, but our intent is clearly to be good neighbors and to make sure it works well. So we will be glad to work on that, but let this gentleman speak.
I would just like to reiterate, and it is important for us to be good neighbors across every house that's in our portfolio. Our business is dependent on it, so we want to work and operate in a way that is beneficial for the communities in which we operate. And so, I also just want to state again that, to my knowledge, the only time that our office was notified of an occupancy complaint, we did go down and we did not find the conditions to be as they were reported. I'm not in a position to say that it has not occurred or has never occurred, and that's not what I'm intending to represent, but the time that our office was notified, that's what we found. As you know, we cannot have interior cameras in the state of New Hampshire. Mr. Melville does have a exterior-facing camera in the driveway that he discloses in the check-in package. We're able to see, how many cars are in the driveway. And I think, if this is I'm not in a position to speak for Mr. Melville tonight, but if the recommendation is that he, reduce capacity at the home, or that if we specifically indicate a cap in number of cars in our marketing, I think those are reasonable suggestions, and I would be open to them. I'm not a decision maker in that regard, but they seem reasonable, and particularly if those are addressing concerns of the neighborhood.
We'll be glad to raise them with him and his wife. He's not here. To speak for him is kind of unfair, so we would like to bring back what we're hearing so we can discuss it with him.
So
And we'll be glad to let you know what he says.
What we can do then is continue this.
We can what?
Okay, continue this, because I'm reluctant, without some kind of firm answer, to say, yes, go ahead and have your permit, because once that's done, then it's done, okay? And
We don't agree.
I'd like to hear the solution for that section ahead of time before I grant a permit or grant the thing so they can issue a permit or whatnot. Because, like I said, these people are valid next-door neighbors, okay? And if there's people reaching their hands across the table, they have reached out and they have indicated these are some major issues to their lifestyle, okay? The point of having an Airbnb is not to infringe on the next-door neighbor, okay? And that's why number D is put in place, is to protect the neighbors and the safety and welfare above. So, and once again, that's why I'm doing this now, so everybody has an opportunity versus, waiting till I close it to all input and just do it here.
Are you making that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chair?
What, that we continue this? to-
Yeah, because I'm not ready, it's been hanging over our heads since April.
I don't think we should drag the neighbors back another
No,
time.
we don't need to keep dragging the
No.
neighbors back. However, we do
I'm ready to
reserve
make
the
a
right to
decision
put
tonight.
conditions on our
That's up to the
approval or
board.
non-approval.
That's up to the board.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that if there is a motion made in the affirmative to approve this, we can
discuss
we
that.
can include, whoever makes that motion can include proposed conditions.
Except for one problem.
And, well,
I have 2 years of experience, and it hasn't been very good, from what we've heard tonight and from what we've seen personally over there.
but the violation of our
Excuse me, just a
specific
minute.
conditions are cause for revocation.
All I know is, for the past 2 years, things haven't changed. Now, all of a sudden, tonight, this gentleman's gonna change things so that everything's gonna be hunky-dory over there. Why would we not believe what we see and believe what we don't see?
I would just like to suggest that there are two sides to every story, right? You know, if there are routine, you know, issues occurring, I'm not hearing about them.
Then you're not doing your job.
That's a little unfair,
No,
respectfully.
no, let's back off on that one, please. Yes, Michael?
I have a question, it's just because I don't know. Is Clearwater Place a part of a condominium type, not condominium or an association?
Homeowner association?
Homeowners Association?
It is.
Yes, there's,
No.
Mr. Sapir said there were 87 homes in the home.
No, that was
No,
the one in
that's another one
Morningside.
next, that's near it.
That's Morningside.
That's Morningside Drive. I don't believe
is
this
not
has an
included.
association, does it?
So,
Go ahead.
the follow-up on that is 33 is Clearwater Place maintained by the city, plowed by the city?
Yes.
It is? Okay, in that case, that answers my question.
Okay. Any other questions? of the
I'm ready for discussion.
I don't think,
Well, I gotta finish the
I don't,
process.
okay, I don't
and
have any
then-
questions of these fellows, no.
Okay. Any closing comments?
Well, I'll be very brief. You all are trying to do what you think is right. We understand. We are trying to do the same thing. We've come here in good faith to say there are issues that we've tried to fix. Are they perfect? No. Will they be perfect? No. We'll do our very best. We have no issue with the people that spoke here tonight. But we really want to be sure that our client doesn't get blamed for all of it, because there were problems, and they've gone out of their way to say no more. They'll continue to do that. So we want the board to know that. We're going to stay with them. We're going to make sure that happens. So that's our last pitch. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and,
thank you.
okay, with that, I'm gonna close it to the public and bring it to the board for discussion. Yes, ma'am.
First off, how do we get 18 people in a 3-bedroom house and say it's legal? Isn't there an occupancy rule?
Yes.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. So, we're only partway through the process on this property in that. Unfortunately, it's taken an extraordinarily long time to get to this point at the zoning board for a number of different reasons, but it is what it is. Under a normal circumstance, this would have been before the board in June or July. A decision would have been made. We would have gone through if granted the special exception, we would have gone through the permitting process. And part of that permitting process is to address exactly the issues that are being seen at this property. And that is parking, how many cars can you have, where are they, et cetera, et cetera. What's the occupancy? We just did the math. The occupancy, if you grant a special exception and we get to the point where we issue a permit, the occupancy is 12. That is what we will authorize on the permit. We will go check the driveway to see how many cars it can hold. Based on Google Earth, it's probably 6 or 8 cars.
It's a big driveway.
You know, but the part about parking that needs to be clear, and when we go through the permitting process, the application process acts as an education process for the property owner. And one of the things we want to make clear to them is, in their welcome packet, when they say there's no parking on the street, that includes their guests. And we have to be realistic and say, we know they're going to have guests. You know, they're renting a lakefront cottage for a week. It's just not going to be the 6 or 8 or 12 of them, whatever. They'll probably have a guest or two. Those people need to understand they can't park in the street either. You know, all the parking has to be. So it's that kind of an educational process that we go through with the applicants. We set the occupancy, we set the number of cars. The noise aware program is one of those things that we recommend to owners all the time. The issue about noise that we heard tonight is not an indoor thing or a nighttime party thing. It's outside during the day type thing, it sounds like to me, which is, I don't know how you monitor that, but, and because that they put in their application to the zoning board for this, and it's taken longer than it probably should have, but because they put in their application to the zoning board to get into conformance, we put enforcement on hold. We can't do enforcement and expect to go to Belknap Superior Court and say, they're still doing the rentals, and they're just going to turn around and say, but we have the application in, and we're trying to get this done, and it hasn't happened in the city. So, you know, it's an unfortunate set of circumstances, I agree, but, you know, so like I said, we're only partway through the process here, and, you know, we can't finish the process, we can't, unless you rule on whether there's going to be a special exception or not, and the issues get highlighted and specified in the permit. And then there's the other part of the permit process is we notify the abutters that the permit has been issued, and we tell them what they have to do to complain. And I hear the comment about why is it on the people who live there to do the enforcement? Because they're there. If it's a noise problem, it is the police. If it's a parking problem, it is the police. And I don't know what was said or done about the parking complaint that was made. We asked police department to run a report on the property. They have, on their logs, they have no complaints about parking. So I don't know what the disconnect is there, but, you know, that's what we go by. But after a permit is issued, we can still enforce the ordinance from the standpoint of the permit can be revoked if there's a repeat problem. If the trash is continuing to be a problem, although that sounds like that's been fixed, if parking continues to be a problem, if noise continues to be a problem, if the occupancy numbers continue to be a problem, then part of that enforcement can be to revoke their permit. And is it 1 year or 2 years?
1 year.
Mm-hmm.
1 year. And so then they can't do short-term rentals for 1 year, and they'd have to come back in and reapply. So, you know, it behooves the property owner to follow the rules, to enforce the rules, to make sure the property is managed. And for the 80 or 85 permits that we have issued in the city since the ordinance was enacted, we have not had one single complaint on any of those properties. No parking, no noise, no occupancy, not one single complaint on any of the properties that have a permit. This property does not have a permit, although they've applied for it, and we haven't got there yet. So I understand the angst, I do. This is, in some ways, somewhat similar to the North Main Street property that kind of was one of the properties that instituted this whole thing, and you know, it's an unfortunate situation. It sounds like they're working on it. I can't guarantee that the problem's gonna be fixed, but part of the reason they're not fixed is we haven't got through the entire process yet.
Okay?
Okay, that's 18 people. 12 still seems like a lot. It's been a nuisance property for a while. I have sympathy for the people living in the neighborhood. My druthers is to deny this. If you want to go against me and approve it, let's approve it with automatically expires in 1 year. And they have to reapply next year, because that way if there's a problem, at least we could deny it then.
Mr. Chair? I don't know necessarily, I see where you're coming from. I don't know necessarily that our ordinance allows for that. Well, I'm just saying the ordinance is the ordinance is the ordinance. We can only operate within the confines of the ordinance. We can't, we're not making law here. To the people in the audience, you guys have made a great point. I wish you had been around when the city council was discussing this ordinance 2 years ago. There's nothing that says that you can't all go back to the city council. They have a special time on their agenda that says for matters not on the agenda. Go. But with that being said, if, you know, through the permitting process, I think that the applicants know they have met the standards that the city council has given us to operate under. And for that reason alone, I'm gonna support this. I'm not gonna make a judgment as to whether I agree with the law or not. That's not my role here as a member of the zoning board. I will recommend
So you
that
think it
we
meets
put the.
all criteria?
I'm not saying that any of this is made up. I'm saying that what we have here before us is flawed law, all right?
No,
But it is what we have to work with.
when you say it
kind of a
meets
di-
all the criteria, does that include the?
Oh, it's a property
the
amendment, there's a lot of
hazard to
amendments. There's a-
health, safety, and general welfare of the public, it meets that
I think.
on its face value?
I think that if the permitting process is to allow it to go forward, and those conditions are established through the permitting process, that it will be. I don't believe inherently that this is, you know, we have not, I go back to what Dean said. We have not had an opportunity to establish workable boundaries with this property because of the delays, various delays in the permitting process. This is not the applicant's fault. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Now, can we, one question I have to ask for Dean, and then I'll shut up. Can we condition a fence?
Thought they were putting
Yes,
up
you
a
could.
fence.
Okay, so if I was to make a motion, and I'm not ready to do that quite yet, I will condition it that a fence is constructed within our fence requirements on the city, so that they have to maintain.
Are you talking about side fencing or front fencing?
Let
Well,
Roland
there is
speak.
no
He-
front fencing.
Roland's
Did
next.
did they receive
Okay.
a letter from the city indicating that they were to cease and desist?
Yeah, that's a good question.
No, you haven't rolled it.
No.
Okay.
Because they came in and made application. They came in and made the application.
So during the application process, they can continue to operate.
It would be best if they didn't, but as I said before, once the application process starts, we put enforcement on hold, because we can't take it any further if an application is pending.
Can, at the owner's expense, a sign be erected out front of the house saying no parking in the street? Street parking not permitted?
Different property owners have addressed that issue
Okay.
differently. Sometimes they put it inside the garage door, sometimes they put it, on the side of the garage. We had one property owner who actually painted parking spaces in their driveway, and in their little welcome package, it says you can only park within the designated spaces, So, different property owners do it differently, but
Okay.
Michael?
In that Clearwater Place is in fact an accepted road of the city, and the city maintains it and takes care of it. Sometimes, when the nice policeman gets called, they'll say, well, that's kind of a civil type of thing. But there should be no civil question here. They don't let you park in the roadway. Public Works says you can't obstruct the roadway. In of that self should be enough to say it should be removed. And I definitely feel for the people who live in the community. If they live on 29, their driveway's in front of the one next to 33. And that's quite a lot of cars. When you look at that, that's filling up the circle and making it hard to get around, which would be a liability for fire services, ambulances going to there in case someone blew their hand off with a firecracker. But if you can't get down the road, that is an obstruction of the right-of-way.
And that is a police matter. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, but as long as there's recognition that it truly is a public right-of-way, and it shouldn't be upon the people who live in the community to go and litigate their right-of-way because it's owned by the city. So that in itself should be enough weight to say, stay out of the street, allow for open access. Fire, ambulance, garbage.
Mr. Chairman, could you explain to me, I'm looking at the document here in front of me, and in order to grant this special exception for the zoning board, all the findings are listed there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So do you make your decision that they meet 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5?
No, it's all five.
5 out
All,
of 5.
it has to be 5 out of 5.
You got a good point.
That's correct.
I just wanted to clear, it has to
Not
be
4
5 out of 5. So, number 4, which says they will not create hazards to health, safety, or general welfare of the public. I think the presentation this evening indicated that that isn't met very well. And it doesn't say that the zoning board has to give consideration that this is gonna go forward to the planning board, and the planning board will put criteria in place. This is about what the zoning board has to do, what the zoning board has to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what about B, increased demand for municipal services? You have 18 people staying in a single house, you're gonna increase municipal services.
Okay.
It's a nuisance property. If you wanna grant them a short term, I say do it temporarily. But
I don't think you,
I am for short-term rentals. I'm for this. Mr. Bianca, I want you to be aware, I am for short-term rentals done responsibly. This is a nuisance, and I don't feel these men coming up here giving us their assurance it's all gonna be good. I don't buy it. The neighbors know what's going on. They live there. They have to put up with it. So it's a nuisance property. It's not your couple from Massachusetts come up and stay for a week, have a couple friends over for dinner. I mean, it's a party central going on here. And therefore, I'll make a motion to deny the application ZO 2021-0018 SE 3030 Clearwater Place, because it's a demand on municipal services and a hazard to the neighborhood.
So,
Second.
we have a motion, we have a second. Discussion?
We've discussed it.
We've discussed it? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the denial, raise your hand. All those not in favor of the denial. Okay, it's denied 4-1. All right. So, as we move on, we're gonna move into new applications. The first application is gonna be 2021-0041, variance 2836 Endicott Street East. Variance application is requesting a variance from Article 8, Section 235-48, E2, design requirements to allow for an existing parking lot that overlaps the proposed boundary line to remain in place after the subdivision of the lot. Applicant, please come forward.
Good evening. Rusty Berthelay, property owner. What I'm requesting for is, I recently went through the planning board September 7th and got approval for the subdivision. There's two parts on the property where the parking lot overlaps. I actually put this one and tried to color it so you can see it better, because that application you have is pretty small, but this shows you exactly what, two sections. One here. This is all green space. And this is an existing parking lot up here. This is actually a driveway that goes into, behind the post office, into the parking lot here, which the reason it's there was requested by the fire department when they put the RV park in, so they could just go right all the way through the parking lot without trying to back out. So there's a section of asphalt right there, and there's a section of asphalt left here with this existing parking lot. The rest of it's all lawn, green space in here.
So, help me to understand what you're asking for, because I have not a clue from what you said.
I'm only laughing because it took me 3 phone calls with Karen and Dean to actually figure out this is a lot more simple than you think it is.
So, yeah, this is actually pretty simple. So this used to be all one large lot. He has a proposal to subdivide it into 2 lots. Where he is placing the new property line, which will create the 2 lots, there's existing pavement. It was all one lot, so the existing pavement was not a problem. Now it's 2 lots, the property line crosses these 2 sections of pavement, parking lot and driveway. The ordinance says that the pavement needs to be 5 feet away from the property line. And it's not going to be 5 feet from the property line, it's going to be right up to and cross over the property line. So that's the reason for the variance request, is to maintain the pavement that is already there and just put a new property line in there.
So this is kind of like, if I can make a reference from past history, where we allowed someone to make a paver path through their backyards when they had on Mechanic Street about 4 properties, and they made a meandering path that encroached into both sides and kept going.
Across the property lines, yes.
Across the property lines.
Yes.
Even though they were separate properties, but it had one owner.
Yep.
Now, in this case, coming back to this case, now I got it clearer in my head. This is gonna be one property owner for 2 properties?
It'll be,
Or-
it's been subdivided into 2 different lots through the planning board, so it'll be 2 separate lots. So it could be 2 different owners,
But there was a purpose for subdividing it, and my thing is, are you gonna sell one of them?
Yes, eventually, yeah.
Okay. Now,
So I have cross easements to go through the parking lot areas and stuff like that, where this asphalt is on the parking lot.
so that's deeded,
Yes.
deeded easements where that asphalt
Yeah,
is.
yes.
And it would be spelled out in the deed itself
Yep.
that this is, okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot easier than
Yep.
it appears.
Just ask the right question.
Sorry, I didn't
Yes,
say
sir.
it right, but
No, that's quite all right.
So these 8 parking spots are go with the
RV park.
RV park?
Yeah, that's our overflow
And
parking.
you're just running the line right down?
Yeah, so that's the overflow parking for the RV park, so if I have extra
And-
cars, they just park there.
And they will be responsible for those? I mean, it's under their insurance and everything like that, because it's part of that park.
Right.
then, Right. Right.
Any other questions of the applicant at this time? You may take a 2-minute break. If there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak for or against this application, please come forward at this time. Introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. And I let the record also indicate, I do not believe I've received any written input from the public, so there was no input at all from the public for or against this. Therefore, I bring it back to the board. Any further
I
questions of the
just have a
applicant?
question of staff. With this subdivision and the pavement, are both of these lots green space compliant? Or do we need to, is there another variance that they need?
There was, no, they do not need a variance for green space.
Okay.
The,
But the individual lots,
yeah,
once they're 2 lots, won't be
yes,
one?
they meet the requirements, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions of the applicant? Any closing comments from the applicant?
No.
There being none, I'm gonna close it to the public, bring it to the board for discussion. Discussion?
I have nothing to say.
Seems like a reasonable use for existing conditions.
Yeah, I mean,
And it would be more detrimental to tear up the pavement to conform to the ordinance as it's written.
Okay, like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the variance the application for variance for 2021-0041 at 28 to 36 Endicott Street East. The variance is requested from Article 8, 235-48E2, and it deals with setback distances for asphalt and property lines. We're looking at creating a subdivision. The asphalt is already there, so it wouldn't, be contrary to the public interest. It's been that way for some time. Spirit of the ordinance would be observed. It is a pre-existing condition. We shouldn't be incurring any extra effort or work on this. It would allow for the separation, do justice. It would allow for the separation of these two properties, and the parking has been there. It goes with the RV park, and they probably use those spaces anyways. And so it doesn't vary the use of it as it's been used for the past 30 years, and it's reasonable because it doesn't affect anybody on the outside, and it makes it so that the landowner can create the subdivision.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second, discussion of the motion. There being none, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome, have a good night. Okay, next application is 20.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna recuse myself from this application. I was involved as a journalist with some legal matters that involved this a long time ago. I'm just gonna
Okay.
sit this one out. We got plenty of alternates. So.
Yep. Any volunteers to,
I'll volunteer.
okay. You'll be voting on this matter. All right, application 2021-0044. The address is 1164 Wares Boulevard, Unit 4, variance application. Applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 235-35B, side and rear setbacks to permit the construction of a 4x12 deck on the rear of the cottage. Would the applicant please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and tell us how we might be helping you.
Good evening, I'm David Ryan, the property owner for 1164 Weirs Boulevard, number 4, along with my wife Amy. I'm here today to request a variance for the rear and side setbacks for a 4x12 deck on the water side of my cottage.
The deck's not gonna hang out over the water, is it?
No, it's not.
Dean, will they need any special permits or anything?
They will need a permit from DES for shoreland.
Is this deck already built?
Yes, it is.
Right here on the picture. Nice looking deck.
Is what you're requesting what we're seeing right here already?
Yes, the one on the front by the water.
And it's not gonna be any bigger or any
Nope,
second story or
nope. That's it.
boathouse?
Nope.
That's a different house.
Is there gonna be stairs coming down from it?
I wasn't going to, but I can if you guys request that.
No, I was just curious, because that would mean more,
And just top down.
more needs, as one might say. Because I'm assuming that's your boat dock, right?
Yes, correct.
You don't plan on putting a plank from your deck to
No,
your dock? Aye, matey. It's time to walk the plank. Any other questions of the applicant at this time? There being none, you could take a 30-second break
Oh.
here. And I'm gonna open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Therefore, I'll close it to the public and bring it back to the board. Mike, you had a question? Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, it's all good. I learned something while I was being quiet.
That's always a plus. Anything you'd need to share with us?
No, I was just looking at these pictures here, and it took me a moment to recognize that they're pictures of other units in there.
Yep.
And,
How they've addressed the situation?
yeah, I just didn't know, that I recognize that number 3 is not number 4.
Yep, okay. Any other questions of the applicant at this time? No, at all. There being none, any closing comments, sir? Okay, with that, I'm gonna close it to the public altogether, bring it to the board for discussion.
I would think anything would need to be dependent upon some sort of nod from DES.
Well, yeah, that would be if it's not already been put in, we normally condition it as DES approval. So that would be one of our normal conditions
And an after-the-fact building permit, but
and an after-the-fact building permit.
Better late than never.
Double trouble.
Any other discussion? Like to entertain a motion then? Anyone?
Trying.
Well, I haven't done this before, so if I'm not gonna do it correctly, please let me know.
Oh,
We will not
We
allow you
will-
to fail. We will help you along.
Okay, I
Absolutely.
make a motion that application Z 02021-044 be approved with the condition that DES, I don't know how to say the rest, makes the final
approval of
decision.
DES.
Okay, that
Do
would
you
be
want
a
your standard
condition.
state and local approvals?
Yeah,
Yep.
that all state and local approvals and permits and whatnot be
in place.
provided in place. And that the, if I may help you,
Yes,
that the granting of the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, as it is not totally over the water, it is there, and a lot of the, it seems like several of the other homes have had the opportunity to build such a deck, so it is not out of character of the neighborhood. The spirits of the ordinance is being observed if they follow through with all their conditions of state and local city permits and whatnot are provided. Substantial justice would be done because it would allow the owner to enjoy his the property a little bit more by enjoying. I'm assuming this is facing the west. Is it facing west? So it'd have some beautiful sunsets with a good martini out there on the dock. Unusual hardship, unnecessary hardships is based on the property itself, as the lots are a lot smaller and the room is very condensed. And since it's a deck, it does provide some porousness to the land so that the absorption of the water and stuff would still not be curtailed to a great extent. And it's a reasonable one because the adjoining neighbors and the condition of the property itself being close to the water line, it provides them with that ability to come out of their sliders that are on that side of the house and provide more enjoyment to it. And I think I've covered all 5 criteria, if you don't mind.
Thank you. No, now I will know to be more detailed.
That's okay. Through trying is learning.
Yes.
Does that include the after-the-fact building permit?
After the fact, that's part of all the city and local
Permitting.
permits and stuff. And let it also note that no stairs are should be
You're right.
coming off of it unless it is required for fire safety hazards or whatnot, but therefore, otherwise, should not, any stairs coming off of it. Okay, got a motion?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. As we're moving along, singing a song. All right, next application is 2021-0045 variance, 55 Shore Drive. Applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 235-35A, front setback to permit the construction of an 8 by 16 front deck, a portion of which would encroach into the front setback. Applicant, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record,
Thank
and
you.
tell us how we can help.
Thank you for listening this evening. My name's Al Russo. I'm the owner of 55 Shore Drive. Recently purchased the property back in November of 2020. The reason why I'm adding this deck, the house is kind of an odd shape to it, and I want to certainly make the house look a little bit better from the outside. A small portion of the deck, when it's drawn out by the 18 by 16, there's a small triangle at the corner that will actually encroach the setback area. The reason why that little section encroaches is the road does curve right there. It's certainly far back from the road, but that because of the curvature, that one section, that small triangle at the corner of the deck encroaches the setback area. I also, if you look at a picture of the house, there's windows there, large windows in the front. It allows me to to return back to there with a rail without bumping into the windows on that section. Basically, again, because I don't think this will be any inconvenience to any neighbor in any way. There's a driveway on one side and some additional property on that left-hand side, to that left side. Again, just trying to enhance the look of the house since I purchased it. And this will come off an existing porch that is already there. And so that one section, that 8 by wide, 16 long portion will come off that existing porch that's on the house. It's no stairs to it. It's actually just a 4-inch step-up height to that one section of the deck. And again, that triangular piece, if I've done my geometry right, it's probably less than 20 square feet, where that will actually be over the setback.
So basically, you're gonna go to the corner of the house under the
Correct.
windows and
Right.
square it off.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And it's because of that corner it goes into it. Okay.
Correct.
And that's a 25-foot setback on that front side?
Yes. Yeah, I never thought it would be an issue, and then I didn't realize the setback was further than the road itself.
Well, actually, the road, in a lot of cases, goes further back than we all realize.
Yeah, right, yeah.
The
that little-
easement for the road.
And I'm right on that curved
It's-
section, is right where that shortens up versus the rest of the deck that's there.
And how far do you think it'll encroach?
If I got my geometry correct, it looked like if I turned it into a parallelogram, it was like 20 square feet, a little over 20 square feet overall, because it takes off that little triangular section off the corner.
Right. Okay. Any questions of the applicant? There being none at this time, I'll give you a 20-second
Okay.
relaxation.
Okay.
I'm going to open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public, and I do believe we've not received any written comment for or against it, so let the record indicate that. And with that, I'm gonna close it to the public and bring it back to the board for question.
I've none of the applicant.
There being none, any closing comments, sir? There being none, I'm gonna close it to the public in general and bring it to the board for discussion.
Yeah, my only question is this adds to the nonconformity, correct?
Yep.
He's already got two pieces of it, that one is in the setback a little bit in the front, and he's got a little bit into the side setback as well, according to this map, if this map that he's provided us is accurate, right?
I mean, it's accurate as the GIS is.
That's what I'm saying,
Which
this
is
is what
exactly-
the GIS is.
I don't think it's a lot, I'm just stating that for the record, that we're doing a little bit of an add to an already non-conforming structure.
Yep, the house already intrudes on the, or the porch does, already intrudes in there, and it looks like the garage intrudes into it.
Into the side setback, yeah.
Right. So,
I'm just stating that for the record.
yep,
Mr.
no,
Chair.
that's good. That's good. Any other discussion? Like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance to allow relief to, what is it, 55 Shore Drive, Laconia, New Hampshire, tax map 423199-23, application Z0202145. Relief from Article 6, Section 235, 35A, front setback. Granting the variance is not contrary to the public interest. There is no public interest in this. It's a big setback. There, you know, it's not violation of the public interest. The variance, the spirit of the ordinance and the substantial justice it's not, this particular request does not violate any of the basic premises of the reason for the zone in this particular neighborhood. It's not, it doesn't run contrary to what the zoning objectives of the city are. I can't see that it would have any value on any of the surrounding properties either way. And the special condition of the property, he's actually kind of got it a little convoluted here. So I'm going to say that the special condition of the property is that the unnecessary hardship is basically created by the angle of the road. There is a hardship that's created here by where the road bends at that point, limiting what he can do with this house. That's not by his design, that's just nothing he can do about that. I don't have to discuss whether or not it's reasonable, but it is a reasonable application.
Okay, we have a motion,
I'll second.
we have a second. Y'all wanna fight over it?
Well, Roland could do it.
Mike will have it.
Roland,
We'll go, okay.
Roland got it.
and, any discussion of the motion?
Nope.
There being none, all those in favor of the motion?
Right?
Okay, motion passes, enjoy it.
Thank you, guys, thank you.
All right, next application is 2021-0046 EW. We haven't done one of those in a while. 74 Sterling Drive, it's an Equitable Waiver. Applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 235-35, front setback to permit the construction of a second-story deck. Applicant, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and tell us how we might help.
Hi, my name's Fred DeVoe. I'm actually the builder of the property. I'm representing Wayne and Laura Kimball Rogers.
Do we have an affidavit giving you permission? Yes,
We do.
Yes, we do. I
On
see
the
it now.
application. Just a correction on it. This is an existing house. It's not a second floor. That was constructed in error. So it's a brand-new house in Governor's Crossing. The house's foundation is placed now, and actually, house is complete. They are hoping.
I don't have this.
Go to the back of the packet, I think it got out of sequence.
Yeah, it's.
I just think the description was
My
wrong on your
okay.
page.
Oh, all right, thanks, thanks.
So this is a new construction house that is 95% complete, and the owners are actually looking to be moving in probably in a few weeks with our final CO. I'm not sure, but if you're familiar with Sterling Drive, it is one of the cluster housing developments. I guess to an error on our part, where when you're in the cluster housing development, we can build up to the side property lines and maintain that distance from the housing. Looking at what happened on this particular house is we set it in the property lines, went through the town process with the permits, got the house built. During a survey for a mortgage plot plan, they realized that a couple feet of the house fall into a buffer around a green space that covers the subdivision. It's not adjacent to anybody else's property, but there's a lot of green space that exists in Governor's Crossing. And by mistake from us, without being aware of that particular setback, my understanding, Dean, is you're okay on the sides, but we found this buffer kind of after the fact and placed the house in error, so we're looking for a variance so they can, continue to move in and get their CO, and we can finish the house.
Where is Sterling Drive?
It's in Governor's Crossing off of Endicott.
Oh, there.
Just say,
Caught east.
I think the subdivision, I'm building in there now, but the subdivision was started, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, probably. We've done a few houses in there.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions, one question.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you were in the, is it a green space setback or a wetland setback?
I believe it's a green space.
Green space.
Green space setback. When did you realize you were in it?
The day that I called and we submitted the application.
Okay. Have you stopped working on it?
We've not, no.
So you continued to work even though you knew you were in violation of the?
Yes, we've not really done much of anything, but we've continued to do a little bit of work inside. I mean, the house was 99% complete when we.
So you're doing interior work?
Yes, the foundation was all in place. I mean, the house is up, it's sided, most of the landscaping's done now. Driveway was in place ahead of time. I mean, it was well underway. And I'm not sure if you guys got a copy of the plan. You can see where the corner caught it by a few feet there. I do know it was a, error on our fault, and, we're certainly aware of it, and we'll make sure we correct the problem going further.
What is on the west side of this property? Is there another house there?
There's a house on the west, I'm trying to look at the map, but there's a house on the left and the right, and then the green space is behind it. It's basically right in the center of the subdivision.
So, are we looking at a deck, or are we looking at the corner of the house?
Oh, it's a corner of the
Or
house.
both?
Corner of the house.
Corner of the house, so the deck is,
The deck is fine.
deck is that corner that's in there?
No.
Or the deck?
Yes, I mean, if I,
So,
If you look at the map, basically upside down, you can see Sterling Drive. The deck is on the rear of the house. It's the right-hand corner, just touches that 10-foot buffer setback. That,
Right above the 27.06.
correct.
Now, that's the house.
That is the house.
So if you're planning on putting a deck there also?
No. No, the deck is already existing where the deck is shown on the back of the building.
So we're not talking about a deck?
No.
Because the information says deck.
Well, the
Or am I
information,
looking-
the information says adding a second floor.
Second-story deck.
Yeah.
And that's not correct.
Oh, no, you're reading the next application down. Second-story deck is for Centenary Ave.
No.
It says it on this one, too.
74 Sterling Drive says
Yeah.
permit the construction
I
of a
noticed that, it says it
second-story
on
deck.
both of them.
No.
8.4 on the agenda.
You're reading the wrong one, hey.
You're looking at the
I'm
wrong.
reading that one.
Okay.
No,
It
8.4
says front
shows second
setback,
story deck,
permit
he's
the
right.
construction
So-
of a second-story deck.
So that,
This is what you put in the paper.
Oh,
yeah,
it's on the
so the
agenda.
description is incorrect.
Yeah, it is.
Hey,
It's
was that
an error.
typo or?
Not a variance, it is an equitable waiver for the
Right.
house.
Right.
In this cluster division,
It was
there are no
agenda.
setbacks.
Yeah, cleared.
You can
Michael's helping me out.
build
Right.
right up to the property, quote, property line, unquote,
See,
if you want to. The exception is, we do have the buffer setbacks, of which most of the houses in this cluster do not, they're not up against the buffer, so they don't have that buffer setback. And these folks have been building several new homes in the past year. I think probably none of them would have been up against the buffer, so.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to clarify that.
So when he came in and approached us, we looked at this and we could have done it with a variance, but as you know, there's a higher hurdle there for variance.
Yep.
And the equitable waiver was created, in my mind, exactly for this kind of a situation. It's an oops, and, you know,
It was an oops.
it is what it is.
Yes.
And it's not like there's another house back there or anything like that. It's just Rocky
I understand.
Raccoon
I'm
and.
just a little I'm
I
just a
was
little
more-
displeased that they continued to work after they realized that they were in error, and that's kind of, you know, we've had situations where, you know, we've had developers rush to judgment to finish a house after they've realized they put it in a wrong spot, and then just left the owners high and dry.
I was under pressure from the owners to keep going because they're excited to get into their house.
I'm
but
sure
it's
they
been a-
probably are, however.
It's been a stressful thing for my part because, you know, I've not been paid for it, so you're trying to walk a fine line.
No, I do understand that, and I understand.
Try to keep
that,
everybody happy.
Like I said, you know, in theory,
I just
I-
wanted to
I
make sure
apologize.
there wasn't a deck involved.
and there's no deck involved.
There's no
This
deck
is a
involved.
corner
I was
of the
trying-
I'm
house.
not trying to add anything.
Get our five-sided garage.
The deck appeared in the in the Laconia Citizen, Sun.
Yes, it
That's where the deck appeared.
Begging for forgiveness is what we're
Yeah,
looking for.
okay, that was a posting error.
We'll correct that when we get to the minutes and all that
Can I
stuff.
ask you a question? I don't know if you're involved in this or not. Why the convoluted lot line?
Oh, I did not have anything to do with the subdivision, but every lot in there is,
There is a
Makes it very
wetland
difficult.
back there, so that's what's determining
but
that
they're
contour.
they're very jagged lots.
Yeah.
It makes it very
It's very
challenging
interesting.
to place a house.
Walk
Yeah,
your walk
I was
line.
looking at that myself, going,
Right.
"Phew."
And this was like so small that the city didn't catch it when it was doing its footings inspections and stuff like that. And we've done all the inspections on this property, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So, any other questions of the applicant at this time? There being none, 30 seconds. I would like to open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wish to speak or in writing for or against this application. Therefore, I bring it back to the board. Any other questions? Any closing comments, sir? Let the record indicate the applicant had no further comments. With that, I'll close it to the public. and bring it to the board for discussion. All I have to say is, oops.
Yeah, it happens.
Well, they wouldn't have to move it if they cut the corner off.
We did that once,
We
remember?
did that once, yes, and I'm just saying that
the
that was
wheels.
another,
That
that
was
was,
a separate situation where cease and desists
were
were
issued and they
were issued
continued to
and
build.
they ignored the cease and desist and continued. So
And they,
those are situations that are different than,
right,
and thanks for your questions, there was none of that done.
so in other words, this was pretty much constructed, at least the exterior of the house was constructed
Before the-
long
this was
before you
discovered,
guys
yeah.
realized there was an error, and it was the mortgage company actually that picked up on it. Yeah, I don't have a problem with this.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion that an equitable waiver of dimensional requirements is requested from, is granted, from the provisions of geez, you'd think I'm better at this, Article 11, Section 235-D-70D, subparagraph 2, on this property, which is 74 Sterling Drive, Laconia, New Hampshire, application number Z020210046, lot number 170-502-14-77. That the need for the equitable waiver is that the bank, the bank did the review of the plot plan, and that it showed a slight encroachment into the 10-foot setback for the green space. The violation was not noticed by the owner or the construction company or any municipal agent until after this particular house had been substantially completed. The violation was not an outcome of ignorance of the law, failure to inquire, obfuscation, misrepresentation, or bad faith. It was simply an error, as we said. And the city was, more importantly, the city was unaware of this minor encroachment. The physical and dimensional violations doesn't really have any bearing on the layout of Governor's Crossing or any of it. Doesn't violate any of the objectives that were set out by the planning board in order to accomplish the subdivision. And the cost of the correction far outweighs any public benefit that would be gained by forcing these people to lop off that section of the house.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Discussion. There being none, all those in favor of the motion.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. All right. Next.
Main Street.
I gotta sort through this to find out what's next.
Main Street.
My agenda, sorry. Was it 18 Endicott Street North?
47.
Channel 9?
47.
47?
47.
Oh, okay.
So now we're on this.
All right. I got a set of blueprints. Anybody knows what the blueprints go to?
The
Water Marina.
48.
With the marina?
They're with the marina. Okay.
I got these
All right.
blueprints for Channel Marine. Steve,
Yes, that's the one it got
Okay.
separated in my package. Okay, next application is 2021-0047. Variance, the address is 674 Main Street, variance application. The applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 235-33, maximum residential unit density, to permit the conversion of a second floor to 2 residential units. Would the applicant please come forward at this time?
Yep.
Introduce yourself for the record. Going once, going twice.
Come
I
now.
make a recommendation that we, is the board wish to continue? Yes?
Well,
give it one
that's
time.
it.
Have we heard anything from
No?
this guy?
So it's not a continue.
No.
Seems like
Maybe
they
they forgot.
forgot.
Shall we continue it and move it to the next meeting and give them one more shot?
Well, we typically do give people second bite at the apple before
right.
we decide to make them reapply.
All those in favor of moving it to the next meeting?
Aye.
Move it. Do you want it back?
People working in there.
Sure, that way I don't have to recopy.
Everybody pass them down. Pass them down.
Pass it to your left.
Pass them to the left.
Save a few trees.
Okay. Next application
You say, Bill, as far as our next packet.
is, and we're down to the last two. Very good. 2021-0048 is a variance, 18 Endicott Street North. It's a variance application. The applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 235-35B, side and rear setbacks for replacement of non-conforming structures in the rear setback. The applicant, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and tell us how we might help.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of your board. My name's Ari Pollack. I'm an attorney with Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell out of Concord. And I'm here tonight for NWM Realty, North Water Marine Realty LLC, the owner of the commercial waterfront property at 18 Endicott. With me this evening is Bob and his son Alex Conrad, the marina owners. They are right there. And behind me is Matt Bangert of Roth and Roth, who's providing some project and redevelopment management services. Also with me is Mike McCowan, the project architect, and somewhere is, right behind the easel, of course, is Pete Blakeman, the project civil engineer. We've filled the room for you. We have,
We appreciate that.
we submitted a variance request for relief from the zoning ordinance, Article 6, Section 35B, Table 2, relating to standards for dimensions on non-residential uses. The property is also identified as Laconia Tax Map 162, Lot 40-5. Specifically, the variance is for relief from the rear structural setback within the CR district. A few facts that relate to the request are as follows. Earlier this year, North Water Marine purchased the former Thurston's Marina. I'm sure you're all familiar with the property and the business. North Water has continued to operate the property this past season as a commercial marina. It's their intention to do so going forward as well. North Water would like to replace certain of the existing commercial boat storage buildings with new buildings constructed to more modern standards and dimensions. As illustrated in the concepts that we supplied with the application, buildings 5B, 6A, 6B, and 6C would be replaced by buildings 6A, B, C, and D. The current storage buildings are approximately 40 years old, and frankly, they're reflective of a different era of water recreation. Everything was smaller: the boats, the racks, the trailers, the buildings. The existing buildings can accommodate boats having a length of between 16 feet and 25 feet, and a beam of 6.5 to 8.5 feet, and approximately a third of the existing racks in the buildings can't accept a boat longer than 18 feet. The new buildings, which are now typical in the industry and are representative of quite a bit of the storage buildings already in the Laconia and Lakes Region area, can and would accommodate a 30-foot length and a 10-foot width or beam. The new buildings are generally in the same location and generally in the same footprint as the existing buildings, but we're turning them from parallel to Channel Lane to perpendicular with Channel Lane. And I'll get into why that is of benefit in a moment. But we also shimmied the buildings up towards the street as much as possible so that we would take advantage of as much rear setback as we could, but still have a functional building. What it means to rotate the buildings 90 degrees is that the loading and unloading can be done between the buildings, whereas now they're accessible from the street, from Channel Lane. This means that the buildings can be accessed by forks working in between the buildings by trained marina staff and not coming at them from the road or backing back into the road. They pick up the building away from the road and then enter the road surface. And so, again, the buildings are turned. They're each both wider and narrower, and they are taller, but the whole point is to accommodate modern boating vessels and stacking. And the new buildings actually conform to the ordinance for the CR district as both the marina use and the side and the height dimensions. We're only before you tonight for that rear setback. The proposed setback is more nearly conforming than the existing buildings. In other words, the new buildings taken as a whole are farther from the water. Again, we've shimmied them up as much as we can to the street. There is a building, and I'm going to have Mike in a minute go through some of the plans for you, that's removed and providing a nice benefit of some new and improved green space. But again, we're still in that setback, but not as much as before, and that's the piece of special relief we need to go forward with an entire redevelopment plan that we're going to present on a site plan package to the planning board. We need to stop here before we can go there. So if I could turn it over to Mike just to go through some of these sheets for you and show you the building layout, then he's going to bring it back to me and I'll go through some of the variance criteria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Board. Mike McEwen from Dennis Myers, the Architects. Our office is in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thank you for hearing us tonight. We first have an existing plan, and to the right side of the plan is Paugus Bay. The buildings that are being taken down are this large building here and these three buildings here, which I'll reference in a development plan in a moment. The catalyst for this project is upon purchase of the facility and the property, this 5B building, we're calling it, the largest of the storage buildings, its foundation was compromised. And that's because of water drain-off practices that were mishandled previously, and basically it compromised the foundation on the right-hand side, on the water side of the property. So it was an immediate concern that had to be alleviated. As Ari mentioned, the idea going forward is that we would use best practice in replacement of those structures. There is a reduced boat count to do it effectively, and there's a few steps that have been taken, as well as turning the buildings, to increase safety on Channel Lane and to develop the property as appropriately as possible. So this plan here shows the turning of the buildings, and this is the new configuration of the buildings. Before, there was a large building that took up this parcel here, and there was a U-shaped configuration of the buildings here. What you'll notice that I'll show on further plans as well is that this not only opens up this area, but it creates water views from Channel Lane. It takes, currently there's about 210 linear feet of building that are on the water right now. And the design that we're proposing is a 45% reduction of the linear footage of building along the water. You could see that by these open spaces here. This is the proposed plan, and not only opening the site, what this does to optimally access these storage buildings is they're accessed on the long end by forklifts taking boats off and on dry storage. Previously, with that U-shaped configuration, the forklift would have to back out onto Channel Lane and come in, and it was impeding Channel Lane traffic in an undesirable way. So by turning the buildings and having them in this configuration, these light gray squares are the areas that are necessary to grab the boats. So as soon as that forklift is in that area, Channel Lane traffic is reduced by a much considerable more rate there, and all of the ongoings of picking boats and placing boats on the racks is within this area here. This plan that you see here, this elevation, this shows the open spaces created. This is a view from the water to the buildings. This is the existing building that will remain there now, and this just shows the access aisles that the forklifts will need to access the storage buildings and the views that are created to the water. As well as creating access aisles and views to the water, in this current configuration, the reduction of square footage necessary for the same program is a 37% reduction in square footage. So that means that the foundations of these buildings were taking up 37% less area on the property, as depicted by these open areas as well. And here's a really glaring example of that. This is an overlay plan with the existing property. There's one building currently here that you can see underneath, and this is the building that has failed and been subsequently taken down. There's another building here. This building here is the one that's closest to the water and actually overhangs the foundation, and it comes all the way out to this area here. This is the last building that would be taken down. So what we've done in the new program was we've reduced and right-sized the new storage buildings. We've set them back onto the foundations along Channel Lane, and here's your green space that's created along the water. We're actually setting these buildings back considerably from the water in this area here and along here as well. So the idea is to beautify the water's edge, to design the buildings and be as efficient with the footprints for the new buildings as possible, and to really just beautify this whole area along Channel Lane.
Just to hit the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm
Okay.
I'm engrossed into what y'all are showing.
It's a nice picture, I know. Just in terms of addressing the statutory variance criteria, it all is covered in our application materials, but quickly to summarize this evening, the granting of the variance is not contrary to the public interest because the new structures will be more conforming in terms of the rear setback and fully comply with respect to height and side and front setbacks. And turning the buildings 90 degrees allows, as Mike said, a 37% overall reduction in footprint coverage and an improved viewscape, both from Channel Lane to the lake and from the lake to Channel Lane in the upland areas. Whereas today, we've got just building next to building across that entire stretch. Breaking up the streetscape with less horizontal massing of structures is certainly consistent with the public interest in terms of enhancing views where we can. Overall, the structure, the storage building footprints are dropping from just about 11,000 square feet to 6,000 square feet, which is a 44% reduction in building footprint. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the proposal brings the nonconformities toward conformity and achieves that conformity in terms of, again, the height, the rear, and the height, the side, and the front setbacks. And it brings it toward conformity, which is an overarching intention of any modern ordinance that deals with previously developed properties. The variance would do substantial justice because it provides for reconfiguration in a manner that allows what is a permitted use to continue to operate, but to do so in a much more efficient manner. It facilitates our planning submission, which then can feature some significant re-landscaping of these waterfront areas, greater architectural and aesthetic appeal of the structures over what's there today. Of course, rectifying the current structural failures that have actually caused us to already take a building down, and focus on some travelway safety improvements as well. The surrounding property values won't be diminished in that the older and frankly tired facades will be upgraded, and the turning of the buildings again allows for significant viewscape, which doesn't exist today. I think it was mentioned that there's significant deferred maintenance on some of these buildings, and we would be addressing that in the form of replacements. Our hardship is that the property And frankly, the surrounding area is already heavily developed. A lot of it was done before an ordinance was instituted in the city. We're trying to bring the property as near as possible to conformity, but certainly certain nonconformities just can't be remedied completely, and the rear setback is one of them. Our choices, in essence, are to rebuild in kind and preserve all the nonconformities, or make these types of incremental improvements with some limited special relief. And likewise, we think the proposal is a reasonable one, since it allows what is already an existing concern to continue in the same business with similar services, and granting that setback allows, like I said, numerous benefits, the most of which is to get those fork maneuvers out of the street and between the buildings, just reducing the likelihood of interaction between marina staff and coming and going of other people. In conclusion, the variance application is a small but important piece of a larger discussion happening at the Planning Board, at DES, and with Marine Patrol. We certainly understand that, change of long-established businesses and operations can create some culture shock, but we think we're making some improvements here that will hopefully modernize the facility and its appearance to our neighbors and from the water and street. And so our request is limited tonight to that rear setback, but it will open the door for our site plan work. So our team is here. We're happy to answer any questions, and we thank you for your attention. I know it's getting late.
Thank you. I do have 3 questions, if I may. First question is, the 2 large buildings on the other side of the street, who owns those?
Northwater Marine.
Same?
Correct.
Okay. Second question, what is the height? You say you meet the height restriction. What is the height?
The ordinance allows buildings up to 60 feet in
Okay.
this zone, and I believe we're in the low 50s with our proposed.
Okay.
54.
And with y'all owning the buildings across the street, I don't see any visual anything. So then as you turn them, you're gonna have the green space for the forklift movement and stuff, which is great. And then that green space, what are your thoughts on that green space?
Right, so it's going to be a pervious area where we can do some infiltration. Pete Blakeman, our civil engineer, is going to be submitting an AOT, or alteration of terrain stormwater plan, to the state, and it will certainly be reviewed at the planning level and with planning staff.
And you will need a DES permit for this?
Definitely.
Yes, no? Definitely?
Yes.
And
Okay.
I can add a little bit, Mr. Chair, of detail to that. We're early in the process, and that's part of our whole master plan that's going to planning and such. We're looking at the ideal pedestrian pathways, dock access, making the site more accessible, much more better looking, I should say, the beautification process, tiered areas of planting beds. We do need an embankment wall to support the ground that's eroding there. That's a very important part of the process, and the idea is to just really dress it up, make it look
Embellish
like
it a little
like
bit.
a front door.
That's what I was looking for myself, was to, such an area of that size is gonna be an opportunity that would be missed if it was just not looked at.
And to add a little bit of metrics for those that like numbers a lot, this building here, just the elimination and reconfiguration of this building that's parallel with the water right now allows for 800 or so square feet of open green area that we can plant and have look nice now, instead of just a 4-story metal blank slate.
Anybody else with questions? Thank you, by the way.
Just for my edification, so 5A stays,
Correct.
right? And you replace everything from 5B down to the end of the ramp with 4 other buildings.
Correct.
You got it.
Just
Okay. Any other questions at the moment? I'm gonna give you a 30-second break.
Thank you.
With that, I'm gonna open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public wishes to speak for or against this application. Please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public, and I don't believe we received anything in writing, so let the record indicate that also. Wish to speak for or against this application, therefore I bring it back to the board for further questions.
The only question I have is, does this have to go in front of the Conservation Commission, or is that, it does, okay.
Yep, as part of the planning board process, it'll go
As
to,
part of
they've been to COMCON once already. They will go again in October.
Okay, Mike, did you have anything you want to add then, that maybe the Concon thought of that I certainly didn't, because
Not that I have without referencing notes. We recognize that we'd see them again, we recognize that it was gonna go forward to know. So we had asked some questions, and I'm sure we'll ask more, but.
Oh, okay, so you're still in the process of,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? There being none, any closing comments from the applicant? Okay, with that, I'm gonna close it to the public, bring it to the board for discussion. If this comes to fruition, I think it would be probably a great benefit myself and
Well, you know what?
harboring such changes.
We're rebuilding Laconia, we're rebuilding Lakeport, now let's rebuild the Woods.
We gotta
You
keep
haven't
it all
even
up to date.
begun to know.
You can sure use them.
Well, let's face it, a 30-foot boat in that area would probably highlight people who have enough coin in their pocket to buy a house that has
So they have more green space there.
ancillary effects across the board in the weirs. So, I didn't see much to it. The building's gonna be turned. As a forklift driver myself, I find it very nice that someone took into account the forklift drivers of the world and the world they live in, moving loads around, so thank you very much. And
The only thing I wanted to clarify is I believe Channel Lane is actually city.
Channel Lane is privately owned.
It
It
is.
is owned by the various property owners as you go along, so.
Okay,
Northwater Marine owns the part of Channel Lane that is in front of their property, and then when you get to the next property, they own 30 feet, and then the next property owns 50, and then eventually you get down to Winnisquam Marina, and they
private
own,
drive.
yeah, it's a private driveway.
so it is a private drive, okay,
private
because I
driveway.
had thought, for some
City is-
reason, I had thought that it was a public.
City
I
is
think for 911, it's
doing
gotta
minimal
be-
maintenance because we have again, if it's a water plant or a sewer plant.
Oh, if you've got something
We've
down
got
there,
a
then.
sewer plant, I believe it
okay,
is, at
then-
the end that
then
we've
you're
got to get
obligated
to,
do
so
that, yeah.
there is some minimal maintenance from the city. Part of Channel Lane is also on the railroad right-of-way.
I was
It's
just
very
gonna say,
complicated out
yeah,
there.
this is a real, yeah, I know.
It's very complicated out there. There's nothing.
The railroad's
nothing
not gonna
easy.
come in until these poor folks
Yeah,
have
but
to
they have it, there's already existing agreements that,
I
for
thought
their
so.
use of Channel Lane on the railroad property and their crossings, et cetera, so.
Guess is that all those ducks were in a row before the checks were signed.
Any other discussion?
Nah, this,
Being familiar with these buildings and the drainage in there, I can certainly see where a reconfiguration of this will make it, easier to work with, safer, and gives an opportunity here, especially if we're going in front of planning, to give an overall drainage assessment of it. And so there's an opportunity here to, because there's, can be some wild water that comes off that hill. Gives us an
would think
opportunity
so,
to
yeah.
better,
Hey, some of the
better
folks
deal with
living,
it.
some of the folks living on the other side of the bank might be able to see the drive-in and watch the movie.
Except there won't be a drive-in anymore, because it's being sold for condominiums.
Might be sold.
So, any other discussion? There being none, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the variance for Endicott Street, Channel Lane, 18, so where are we, 162, 40-5. Application number 2021-0048. We're looking for a reconfiguration here of an aged and deteriorating set of buildings. It's an opportunity for upgrade. Our variance here, we're requesting from Article 635B, relative to setbacks. Would you like me to read all of this as it was?
Or you can enter it as.
You can enter
As
it
stated
as
by the
written.
applicant.
Stated.
And print it on the, and that's what I got.
Did you want to add the standard conditions that DES permitting and all
Oh,
that?
yes,
I mean,
oh.
I know it's implied, and I
Yep,
know
but-
everybody
but-
knows that.
But for statement of it,
Said that myself, so I'm glad you did.
Okay.
Thank
yep,
you.
all appropriate, permits and, DES, approval.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll
We got a
second
second? Got a second? Discussion of the motion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
You guys were really well prepared, and it was a great presentation.
It's always nice when we could just enter it
It
as
was very
written.
nicely prepared and good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
This is the one with the deck on the second story.
A lot of work into that.
And once again, Mr. Holmesy and I have known each other for a long time. So I've got
Oh, wait a
alternates.
minute.
I'm going to let the alternates take their seat.
Richard Holmesy.
Yeah,
He used to be a customer of mine years ago.
Do you wanna recuse yourself too? I'll jump out
I'm
of the
not going
vote.
to recuse myself, I haven't.
No reason.
Well, he and I talked a lot when I was
And they're
in
gonna
my
do
other
We were all
profession.
up there the last time.
We talked about it a
They're
lot.
putting some money in it, believe
You know,
They're
to me,
spending
in a
millions.
small town like this,
Millions.
everybody's gonna know somebody,
Gonna help them.
and somebody knows everybody.
I almost
So-
stopped for gas at that Citgo station. but it looked
Okay.
like
Who wants to alternate this time?
Yes.
Marcia can take
Just,
Marcia?
it was nice to put a face in
There you
it.
go.
Okay, let the record indicate Marcia is
Marcia's
on
up.
this
I'll fill it out
application.
again, jeepers.
And let's see, application 2021-0049, variance 27 Centenary Ave. Applicant is requesting a variance from Article 6, Section 235-35A, front setback to permit the construction of a second-story deck. Would the applicant please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and tell us how we might help you?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Board, Richard Holmesy, 84 Summit Ave, Laconia, New Hampshire. My partner, Mr. Glenn Robertson.
Hi.
Just to bring everyone up to speed, this is known as 27 Centenary Ave in the Weirs, known as Methodist Circle area. This was a house that was foreclosed on by the city for lack of tax payments, I believe. There was a silent bid, silent auction. We made a bid on it and purchased the property. I believe this property was cease and desisted by the city for inhabitable conditions and so forth, while people were squatting it over the years, I guess, from what I'm being told. So it's already, some of the minor repairs that we're working on is bringing it up to code and getting it inhabitable. At this point in time, we've spoken to the fire department. There is no need for a second egress because it's less than 20 feet high from the second-story apartment. But with the lake view and this being on the lake side of the street of Centenary, there is a beautiful view there, which we'd like to have our tenants enjoy. The house is pre-existing non-conforming, as is like everything in the Methodist area, mostly everything. So we are looking for a permit to put a second-floor deck. As you can see by the photos, the first photo is a very old photo to the website. The second photo is the yellow siding, which is current. If you look at the lower picture, there's a handicap ramp on the ground. That's going to be removed. The deck, the upper windows on the left and right, left and middle side of the front of that porch in the back is where the deck is gonna be placed if it is approved. That middle window is being removed and a sliding door being put in. So we're not saying that we don't want to put a second egress, but there's already egress windows there that are big enough, and the city doesn't require it. But with a flat deck up there for viewing purposes and enjoyment, which is what we want people to do in the Weirs in Laconia, we can then say, as a matter of safety, they can remove themselves from, God forbid, a burning house or a tree came through, whatever, and get to that roof deck, which is flat, level with a railing, and then fire apparatus can rescue them, bring them down. Or, from what I'm told, if it's less than 20 feet, you can supposedly jump off and not be permanently injured. So that's somewhat of our little presentation. The deck plans are on the next page. The non-conforming, pre-existing non-conforming use on the Google photo shows that we will just, we're never gonna hit the ground with this deck. The whole deck is gonna stay on the roof. Now, keep in mind that the roof of the house, the shingles, are all no good. There's already a pallet load of shingles there waiting to be replaced. But if this is approved, we will not only take the shingles off, we'll take the plywood off. We'll get to the structure of the house and put the supports and the railings for the roof deck into the structure of the outside walls of the house. Have it inspected, redeck it with plywood, flash it, and then put on that section, we're not gonna put roof shingles, we plan on putting what's called a double coverage product. It's almost like a rubber roof, but it's designed for under solar and under decks. It's designed for that person, it's double coverage. So that would be under the decking area and the railings for the roof deck. There is, because it's a pre-existing non-conforming use location, there's a street in front of us, Centenary. There's a street on the right, I think, is Allen. And what's on the left? There's a parking lot on the left of the house that belongs to another property, and then there's a street there, I forget what the name of that street is, to the left. So there's really, there's all these, it's right on the property lines everywhere. Just recently, we filed with the city and we put in drainage on the street to alleviate drainage from the street into the storm management system. That's all been installed, permitted, approved, and finished. So we're trying to bring this up to code. We're trying to make it better. We're trying to make it enjoyable. We want to make it a good rental so that people will want to stay here, be here for long term. This is not a weekend rental. This is not a week-to-week rental. This is going to be a long-term rental, 1 year minimum, stuff like that. We want people to be there all the time. We don't want them coming and going. And we don't want to add riffraff to the Methodist area. I've met a lot of the neighbors. There are a lot of nice people down there, and they're all putting money into their houses. So it's really been very rewarding to see what they're doing to that area, and we want to do the same. I'm not sure what Glenn has to say on our behalf. He's more than willing to. We're partners in this together. If you have any questions, we can take questions.
I got questions.
Sure.
Okay. If I understood correctly, the deck is gonna be basically the new roof on the right side where that window is?
Second set of photos, upper and lower yellow building. Okay?
Yep.
On the
And it's
low,
gonna go
on the lower photo, you see the two lower windows near the ramp?
Yep,
It's gonna be on that roof.
it's gonna be on that roof?
Correct. And it will only go to the corner of the second junction. It won't go all the way to
Okay,
the end of the house.
So where it kinda goes in?
Yes, where it jogs in, it
and
will
then it
come out
goes-
to the edge of the porch, and it'll only be there. It won't go anywhere else.
Where that other window is?
Correct.
Where that side window is. So it's gonna go just there across. Is it gonna come out off of the roof?
No, nothing's coming off the roof. The railing will meet code, and it'll be the edge of the building itself. It'll be built into the walls of the building, and it will stay within the confines of the building, which is already pre-existing non-conforming.
And the chimney's gone?
The chimney, so there's a
From the
chimney.
old picture.
Yeah, there's a chimney on the old picture, and the only thing that's there now is a stub about 8 inches out of the ground, so we'll.
Okay, I was
Parking
just
bus,
curious
yeah.
how
Yeah, it's
y'all were
gone.
gonna work around, cause it looked like it was freestanding.
Yeah, it does look like
It
that.
was different.
And maybe that's why it fell over or something happened to it, they removed it, who knows, over the years. But that's a pretty old photo, too.
Yep.
Look at the Jeep that's in the driveway. That's probably a 74 to 78 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah.
What's wrong with
Nice.
Right there, right, Mr. Foot?
Be nice,
Right?
yeah.
So, and just so you know, to gain space, we put a 500-gallon propane tank underground in the driveway, in the center of the driveway. We put boulders around it, had that all inspected by the fire department. Eastern Propane did it to try to make it more appealing to the outside surroundings of the house. So we're gonna make a flower bed out of that. We're gonna dress this thing up really nice, so.
Do they plow in there, Richard?
So from what I understand, it's city water, city sewer, city trash, twice a week, Monday and Fridays in the summer. Mondays in the winter, every other in the summer for recycling. And the city plows the street on the right, which is Allen. Now, this is what's going on. They gave them their private ways. The city they asked for everyone's support to take over the street and plow it. The street to the left, which I don't remember the name of it is now, maybe someone. Morris. If they don't get one more person's support for next year,
They don't get plowed?
after this season of 21-22, the city is no longer gonna be plowing that street per Wes Anderson. But that doesn't affect us because there's a parking lot that is owned by another piece of real estate behind us and across the street. So who is holding this up from giving it to the city? I don't know. There's what, 4, 5, 6, 8 houses, 6 houses, someone. There's one house that hasn't given the city permission to take it over as a public street. So, Allen, the street going to our driveway is being plowed by the city.
So you can stay in there during the winter time, it's not a three-season?
That's correct. It's a fully insulated year-round home. Yeah, yes.
My question here, when I look at this, okay, where the handicap ramp is there?
Yes.
Just to the right of it, that set of double windows there?
Yes, that's a porch.
Are you building out over that, or
No.
just to the corner there above
Just to
it?
the inside corner of that lower wall
Yeah,
and to the outside corner of the porch, but not past, let's say, not past that next wall.
yeah.
Follow me? We're going down the porch about 4 feet along the edge roof of the porch,
Yep, okay,
and nothing's hitting the ground. Now, we're gonna pull out the handicap ramp because it's not needed, but we're putting in a couple of steps. Now, go ahead, Chair.
Actually, I had a question. Why do they need, if it's never gonna touch the ground and it's part of the roof system of the building, why do they need
They're increasing the nonconformity because they're adding structure to the building.
Very good. Okay.
So
I was
just
just
'cause,
curious.
right, I took it as, it's already pre-existing non-conforming, but you're making it more non-conforming. But at the same time, we're trying to make it safer. We're gonna make it more pleasurable, more marketable, keep tenants there longer. We're putting central AC, central heat to keep people interested in having a nice home to rent in the facility. And one other thing was, if this is approved, we're willing to put a set of stairs coming down from the right window in the lower, down to the left corner of where so the same angle as the ramp. But we don't have to. Right against the house. But it'll be there's a doorway where that ramp is.
Yeah.
It'll be to the left of the door. And it'll be 2 foot wide attached to the house. But we don't need to. We don't need it. It's an expense. But if the city wants it, hey, we're okay with it. The city, the fire department said you don't need an egress, so we said fine. But we definitely want it to be safe. And by putting the deck out there, making it level and flush with a guardrail, we feel is safe.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
Nope.
How many seconds you gonna
30-second
give us? You changed that today. You went from 50 seconds to 40 to 30,
It might be 20, I mean.
It might be
Okay, it's
20,
getting
might be
late,
20
right?
minutes.
I'd like to open it up to the public and ask if anybody from the public would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward at this time and introduce yourself for the record. Let the record indicate no one from the public wishes to speak for or against this application, and there was no write-in comments on for or against it. Therefore, I bring it back to the board for questions.
Seems to me to be a reasonable use and an upgrade for the property.
Is this a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not
That's
a
okay.
question. Sorry. Shut up.
Comments are like questions.
No, I think you made a good presentation.
Question or a comment?
Okay.
Okay. Any closing comments?
No, sir, thank you.
With that, I'm gonna close it to the public and bring it to the board. Comments, please.
I see. Let's do it right. No, it looks fine. There's no problem with it.
I think if the fire department requests stairs, put them in. If not, then I don't think, to me, it would probably improve the security of it by not having stairs there and stuff like that. Seeing how it's, as much as they wanna keep it year-round, you know, there's a lot of area over there, it's not year-round, so it does beg for opportunities
Rovers.
that may or may not be necessary, so, other than that, I think it's marvelous myself.
I think it seems like a reasonable use of the property.
Yep.
And down in, dare I say it, that neighborhood.
Yep.
You know, there's a whole culture of sitting on the porch and seeing your neighbors.
Well, that's the
So
community.
you need,
It's-
yeah,
And I will say this, if someone didn't like this, any of the abutters, from my previous experiences of other decks within that area, they have been quite vocal. So, in this instance, I have not heard any vocalisms, so it must be okay by the general public. So, any other discussion? There being none, like to entertain a motion.
I'll do a motion.
Alrighty.
Okay, so for application number 202-10049, 27 Centenary Ave, looking for relief here, a variance for Article 6, 235-35A, for the construction of a second floor deck. This variance would not be contrary to the public interest because it would not impact members of the public. Spirit of the ordinance would be observed. You are creating, you are, first of all, you're upgrading the house and taking care of some issues probably from the age of it, and so it makes it look better, makes it more useful for the people who would be in there. Substantial justice, it provides a lake view seating area and a spot to enjoy your backyard without being on a very small lawn that doesn't actually exist. And it would not diminish the value of the surrounding properties. And it doesn't make it so very much more non-conforming as it's just going up on a building that's already there. And it allows, it's reasonable because it allows use of the property for those nice summer days.
Second.
We have motion, we have second. Discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It passes 5-0. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a safe ride home, okay?
All right, you too. Any other business before the board?
Next month, you'll have your calendar for 2022.
Okay. There being none, motion to adjourn? Nope, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say something.
Yes.
Oh, there, I'll take it. I'll bring it downstairs. Thank you very much.
Just that, as a member of the zoning board, I watched the last beginning of the planning board meeting. And I know the two boards are separate and distinct, and I know that there's been another, request for the city council to go forward and put more performance zoning. this time in at the Weirs, which, as we all know, as board members, circumvents any zoning board oversight. I just want to make sure everybody on this board is aware of that. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but
I think less oversight is never a good thing, so that's my opinion.
but we have nothing to say about it. I just figured I've got
I
a
work at the
bully
will of the
pulpit right
city
now, and that's
council,
just.
but performance zoning is not necessarily one of my preferences in the world. And that's my thing.
Yeah, well, I think, for me, reasonable development in the Weirs is nothing that I can see this current zoning board standing against.
Well, to me, if it's
and
good,
it just seems like it's been this mentality of, well, let's not bother with the zoning board.
I think we did a good thing
it's
by
good-
Channel Marine and the Weirs.
Well, no, I'm just
if it's
saying
good
it's.
development, then it would pass muster of zoning.
And-
And if it's bad development, it wouldn't have. And all that's doing is taking that out of the mix, as far as I'm concerned. So I never would be in favor of performance zoning, because it takes out another set of eyes that overlook things, okay? And the more eyes on it, if it's approved, then it has that opportunity to be the best that the city can get. And the less eyes that are on it, then, they've already proven once that they created an issue that cost almost a month of development time over something that was performance reviewed, and then the board that approved the performance review had issues with it. So it's got, I guess for speed, it has its good things, but that's all it's good, is it's got speed. But to me, now, this is my humble opinion.
Well, no, we have no authority here. I'm
Right.
just saying that if you have an opinion on it.
I'm going to ask a question, Steve. I'll be the ignorant one.
Huh?
What do you mean by performance zoning?
It falls, a lot of the things that would have came to this board falls under the purview of the planning department, and they make decisions based on that and planning board input. And then they can move on with large projects within the city, the portions of the city that are deemed where they want
Right for
enhancements.
development, shall we say?
Redevelopment enhancements.
Redevelopment, yeah. I mean, in theory, performance zoning, and it works this way, is you try to create a system whereby, as an example, you're looking for performance out of a piece of property. You're not necessarily looking
Highest,
for a
best
goal.
use.
Yeah, you're trying to get the highest, best use out of it. Any performance zoning has to be vetted, any new performance zone has to be vetted by the city council. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Dean. Has to be vetted by the planning board. A series of public hearings are held on it. It goes to the city council has to vote on it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's something, it allows for a lot more mixed use. It does allow for a lot more flexibility within the confines of the piece of property. A typical project would have to come in front of the zoning board with a large project could have as many as 15 to 20 different variances that need, sure, I mean, you could, depending on what's the size of the property, the uses, the density, the things like that. It gives development, it gives but what it does do is it takes us out of the picture.
Another set of eyes.
And
if
our
there's-
second set of eyes. This isn't to say we would turn down any kind of project that we
Well,
felt
if
was
there's
worthwhile,
issues
but,
with it, fix the zoning.
and
But
there's
that's
that.
how they fixed it, they just took it
Well,
out.
then the state did that. The state in 2018 allowed for performance zoning to become
Yeah,
a thing, and the city council adopted the provisions, the overall
Yep.
provisions of zoning, and that's all I'm saying. I'm just saying that as a member of the zoning board. I don't think we're irrelevant. I don't think we're unreasonable as a board.
so,
I was just thinking of a certain piece of property on Church Street.
I don't know, nothing has come in front of, all I know is what I saw at the planning board, that there's a request for some performance zoning overlay, which is actually in a TIF district overlay, which is tax increment financing district that has been established for years at the Weirs. I would say that's nothing new. That's been around since probably the 90s anyway. And it's to facilitate what I expect to be some concrete development proposals, because it just didn't come out of left field. We don't know what those proposals are because they're not official, although property owners have indicated that they are willing to sell, and at least one of them, two of them have indicated that condominiums and/or a hotel may be involved in some of this development. And what I see as a key zoning board, or would have been a zoning board issue, is height. Because there's not a lot of land up there, so in order to make it developable in any grand sense, it's gonna have to be tall. And the city has regulations on how high buildings can go. Those regulations go out the window.
I didn't know that was 60 feet. He
Huh.
said 60 feet tonight.
I don't know, I think the tallest building in the city right now is this
commercial
building over here,
setup,
and that's
it
what,
can be.
70?
The hotel.
Is it the hotel, how tall is that? 70 for, just for,
Yeah.
about 70. The fire department would know, because because of the senior citizen, Sunrise Towers, the fire department determines how much ladder truck they need to buy every year, because they have to be able to access it. I'm mentioning this because members of the zoning board may not have watched the planning board hearing. A series of public hearings is coming up. If you have something to say on it, you know, look into what it is. If you agree with it, great. If you don't agree with it, great. Now we all know. That's that.
Done? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yep, and by voting for it.
You didn't think you were gonna get away that easily, did you?
After that, 10:30?
I sat down too much today.
By the way, I'm back to the